Might have lost Jake.
All right, it looks like we have Zach on the line. Let's get this meeting started at 9:30. Mr. Kennedy, would you like to give us an update?
Absolutely. Thank you guys for having me. And as we get started with the 2022 session here, second half of the biennium, the legislators have hit the ground running. There's kind of a slew of bills going on here this week. Some of them new, most of them old, kind of rehashes this stuff. I did send out this weekend kind of a schedule for the week with bill numbers and some highlighted stuff you guys might want to pay attention to, but I'll just go through real quickly some of the notes that I have and some of the concerns that I've heard a lot about. First of all, from the treasurer's House Bill 1410, that's the property tax deferment program, defers the property taxes by a year, mitigates the penalties. Treasurers are pretty, again, up in arms about that one. It's not necessarily good for planning. And if people figure out that it's cheaper to defer your taxes than it is to pay them, that's not a good thing for the county. So there is some work being done on that one. We'd love to see it go away. Wasac's position on that will be the same as last year, which is we don't want it, but if you're going to do it, please make some changes. So we'll watch that one closely. I think the final disposition of that one will probably be about the same. Hopefully it'll just go away. The other concern that I've heard a lot about is this WAC. It's 246-100. There's a meeting tomorrow talking with the Department of Health. What they're talking about is that's a statute that's in existence right now that says in the case of an emergency and medical pandemic, basically is what they're trying to do with this, is that they could inter people who are sick or won't take a vaccine or any number of things. The meeting is tomorrow to talk about it. We're hearing both sides of the fence. This is going to be the end of the world, and then other people saying it's really not that bad, we're just talking. So we'll watch it. There's definitely a lot of opposition to including COVID-19 in that statute, and I just don't know what to tell you how that's going to come out, but we will be watching that hearing tomorrow. It's something to keep an eye on. There is a bill 5514. This is a Benton County bill. What it does is it allows for the commissioners to meet outside of the county seat monthly, as opposed to only allowing a quarterly meeting outside of the county seat. It's specific for Benton County because they like to have their meetings in Kennewick, where most of their people are. Most of the counties are basically saying, hey, we'll support you. It's nothing that really a lot of the counties would want to do, but it's more permissive, so that's a good thing. There is a interesting little micro trenching bill. I don't know that it would affect you guys too terribly much, but it's 1722. That one specifically is centered around broadband access, installation of small cell nodes for, say, 5G, 4G service. This one would compel a county or a city to allow the installer to install something in a trench that's 6 inches wide and up to 12 inches deep in your right-of-way. It exempts some things like state highways or state right-of-ways, which is probably where in the rural areas where most of these nodes are going to be. So it's really interesting. Axel's working on that one with the association. They think they've got it to somewhere where it's really not going to be too terrible, but we're going to keep an eye on it. Another one that just dropped might be interesting for you guys. It's House Bill 1933, which would allow for counties small counties, you got to qualify for it, but it would allow you to put an excise tax on cannabis producer and processors. The idea behind this is they would like to incentivize local jurisdictions, rural areas, to bring in producers and processors where there's a lack of industry. I don't know that it's a huge deal for you guys, but it's something to watch. It could be another revenue source. 1202 is kind of one of those big group of the police reform or criminal justice reform bills. This one's on today at 10 o'clock. and judiciary. But what they're talking about with this is civil remedies, basically civil liability for police officers. We're having enough issues keeping our cops, in the rural areas in general. So it's something that we're not super fond of. I don't know that it'll go anywhere. It didn't go anywhere last year. And I would love to say that the legislators have learned something from the bills that they implemented last year. Think Long-Term Care Act and other criminal justice reform stuff, police defunding. That just isn't working. But they seem to bring it back up. So that's, we'll just kind of have to go with it and obviously oppose these things as they affect us negatively. In Senate Ag this afternoon at 1:30, there's a work session that you might be interested in, and probably quite a few of your constituents. It's talking about the cattle industry. Specifically, they're going over country of origin labeling and the brand inspection program, the pesticide commission, things like that, obviously cattle producers and feeders are going to be really interested in. I don't know, I wouldn't expect a lot of change coming out of that, but there's certainly going to be, some interest that you might want to pay attention to. Climate issues, they're trying to incorporate climate into almost every bill they possibly can. One that they're looking at that you'd probably be interested in is 5626. It's talking about incorporating climate resilience in water system plans. It's just another step that you'd have to take, and it's pretty vague. So we're watching that one really closely. There is an interesting one, 1718, which would ban fur production. Now, the question, it's not like anybody has mink farms or anything around here, but the question this raises is, what about the cattle industry? Would that mean that you can't produce any leather out of the hides or any fur, anything? So we're looking into that one. We'll see kind of what that one looks like. I don't know that it's going to affect the cattle industry, but if it does, we're certainly going to watch it. So those are the real big ones that we've been watching. Is there anything so far that you guys are seeing, or any issues that you want to look at, want us to pay attention to, comment on, or anything like that you see coming up?
Gentlemen, would you like to go first?
I don't have anything specific. You kind of covered everything, and then sent out your weekly emails covered it. So for now, we're just kind of watching. But sure, as we go on, I've made my own comments on the record on some of these bills. Depending on where they go, we might comment from the board on the record, but we'll.
Okay,
Commissioner Sauter.
Yeah, the only thing I would, there's nothing new here as far as we've been kind of tracking these topics for a while. One thing, I don't have the bill number, I think it was just dropped yesterday, is one that has to do with a bill payment. It would be changing for renewable energy projects, which would give a option for local legislative authority to negotiate a pill payment instead of the traditional property tax. I'll get you the number because I don't have it. I was looking for it. It's in my notes back in my office. But
That is House Bill 1921.
Thank you.
cool. There was quite a bit of discussion about that pre-session. And yeah, so that is, I think, a really good issue to address. Obviously, we're seeing some kind of opposition from the people who own those assets, and how they're taxed, because right now you guys are getting the short end of the sticks. So it's certainly something that obviously you guys want to support.
I think we've got more work to do on that, to flesh that out in terms of the valuations, where it's setting, in essence, a cap on what that pill could be rather than a floor. And then when it's set for 10 years, there's no CPI inflator or anything else. So when you look out 10 years, some of these, it might be a pretty good deal for the companies and not for the counties. So we've got more work to do on that one, I think.
Yeah. Well, and one of the questions that came up when we were running this by a lot of the other counties was, specifically looking at how we've seen the PILT program operated by the state. For example, they're at 2009 levels of payment, so who's going to collect the tax? And then is that going to be something where, the state's going to say, oh, well, yeah, we collected it, but we can't pay it all to you because of, all these things. Who knows what reasons they'd make up. So that's something that was brought up by quite a few other county commissioners that I think we probably want to look at.
As for me, another one is Senate Bill 5558, which is the bi-state authority for the rebuilding of the Hood River Bridge. If you guys would like to be in support of that, that would go a long ways. There's a hearing in Senate Transportation on Thursday at 4 on that. And we've got some very minor technical tweaks left to it.
Okay.
And then another one is Senate Bill 5727, the Riparian Buffer Bill. Been watching this one, and I think this one for pretty much all of our landowners next to any streams, this one, the way it's written, is very, very scary. Have you guys looked into that?
We have looked into that. It has a companion that's House Bill 1838. The governor has put a lot of emphasis on salmon recovery. That bill is in committee. It doesn't have a hearing scheduled yet. We'll watch those two, because the fact that there are companion bills here on that one, we will figure out as soon as it gets a hearing and let you know.
Okay. And then the other one that's on my list is 5613. And this is making a change to the legislation that allows local governments, counties to have anything to do with wildlife that are harassing or depredating on domestic animals and livestock.
Yes, that one has been referred to committee. It doesn't have a hearing yet. We can watch that one for you as well. Obviously, that's definitely a benefit, being able to do that.
Agreed.
So that's we'll keep an eye on those ones, and as they start coming up and around, we will come back around to it and let you know what we see. We might touch bases with some of the sponsors to see what the reality of them coming up for hearing is.
That would be great.
Okay. So with that, is there any other bills, any other questions that you might be interested in?
Not for me right now, gentlemen.
No, sir.
No, not for me either. There will be as we go forward.
We're just getting fired up now.
Yeah.
That's right. Just getting fired up.
I want them getting fired up and get done and get out before they do too much damage.
I'm trying to keep my blood pressure down.
Yeah.
I've got one more, 5613. Do you have any updates on that?
5613. Let me see where they are on that one. I'm gonna have to pull it up on the computer here real quick just to see. The five.
That's the wildlife bill, isn't it, Jake?
Yeah, that's the wildlife one. We're gonna.
that's
It hasn't got. It's in committee. Hasn't got a hearing yet. We can touch bases with Van de Wedge here and see what he thinks is going to happen with it.
Oh, got it.
There's a
Yep.
big push with that kind of outside of the legislature on fish and wildlife. for the governor to make appointments to open seats on the Fish and Wildlife Commission to get a few more PETA activists involved. And so that's a side note, but I'm watching the Wildlife Commission as well.
Got it. We will certainly do that. All right, well, it looks like we're at our end time here, so I can let you guys move on to the next one. Definitely appreciate the time, and as always, call or email anytime. Be available, like I said, phone, email, text, whatever you need. So thank you very much, and we'll talk here in a couple of weeks and watch for the updates.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Good luck this session.
Oh, thank you. We'll need it.
Yeah, agreed.
Bye.
Bye. Okay. Is Aaron on the? No, Aaron's not on yet. Gentlemen, is there anything else you'd like to discuss since we got 15 minutes before the Board of Health discussion?
Nothing super exciting. I did do the community meeting in Dallas Fort last night for the property transaction for the community center. 15 people or so online, a couple of comments that they didn't know what it was about, so they were just tuning in to hear what it was about. The rest of the comments were in favor of giving the land back to the county. It sounds like the board is going to act on that on Wednesday to finalize that deal and give that land back to the county.
Dave, would you like to give an update of your meeting yesterday on the House bill?
1921.
Yeah.
Yes, so I did meet virtually, so it's myself with some members of the solar industry, pretty specifically the Cypress Creek, and their industry's lobbyist, Jim Johnson, they were wanting to get some input from us as far as on the language of this House Bill 1921, which would be an option for, it would give that option for the local legislative authority to negotiate a maximum. Mr. Anderson's correct. It's got a cap, not a floor, based on a per megawatt of the nameplate of the project. Project for negotiated for a 10-year period, 10 even payments over a 10-year period. The project would not go onto the tax rolls. There would be the standard, or their part of this legislation is to establish or to look at the depreciation schedule specific to these projects and modify the industry is arguing that the depreciation schedule is not accurate to their projects. That it was, at least the take I got, it's like wind is different than solar. Again, this would be optional. I would say the biggest sticking point right now is that cap. Like I'm supportive of having the option to use a PILT instead of the tax rolls, because then you don't have that depreciation that's it's the tax shift that's going on when those big projects go on the tax rolls. But the biggest issue I have is with what's that number? What should that number be? So that it's fair, or it's not a tax break to the industry. They're basically paying the same amount of taxes that they normally would under the current system. It's just an even payment for 10 years, which is way better for local jurisdiction than the system. It looks based on they're arguing that their values are not accurate to what they should be. And so their calculations, which I will share some of my research I did later. It's in my office in my notes as far as the cost to construct and what they're doing in Oregon and other places, which were not exactly consistent with what they said. Where they, because the number that they came up with is $4,500 per megawatt. Are currently our wind projects. I had done the figures on what we currently, because we don't have any solar projects on the tax rolls to you know verify against, but it is our current wind projects are they're all have been on the rolls for a while, so there is some they're depreciated. They average between $5,000 and $7,000 per megawatt is what they're actually paying. So
they're saying their cost to build is $4,500 per megawatt.
no, that they would pay taxes of $4,500 per megawatt rather than on there. If you use the current tax system, again, I'm not the assessor, but as a layperson, I just took the value of construction, reduced the numbers that they're giving us. So 160 megawatt project that they had just applied for in Oregon was $212 million. What's the cost of construction? Less their 30% tax credit that they get. So it would go on the tax rolls. It's about $1 or about $1 million a megawatt, which is about consistent with what they have told us. Well, if you take that value in our tax system, it generates about $8,000 a megawatt in the first year, and then it drops as it depreciates. So 8,000 to 4,500 there's quite a delta there between. So that's, I think, their argument is that when it all gets done, it shouldn't be placed at it shouldn't be generating 8,000. It really should be generating the average of 10 years to generate about $4,500 per megawatt. But that's their position, not necessarily mine.
Why did where did the 10-year come up with the 30-year project?
It could be, it's just capped. It's not, it can be renegotiated after 10 years. So it would set it for 10 years. And I see the perspective is that you would look at what is, so, you know, in a perfect world, the 10 years would be the average of what they would normally pay over that 10-year period, evened out over 10 years. The second 10-year period would be the average of what they would normally, which would be lower because they're depreciating. And then you could, but they did, like they can't opt out when you sign the contract in this legislation, after the initial 10-year period, they can opt out and just go into the regular tax system and start paying it if, so that would be the negotiation, because they would be looking at, because they're in year 11 through year 20, their values would have been depreciated in the normal system. They would be paying less than $4,500 per megawatt. So they would obviously want a new number. So maybe it's $3,000 per megawatt in the second 10-year set. So I think they were looking at it, and I agree, is that you wanted it a big enough chunk where you have certainty about what the revenue you're going to get.
I'm just thinking when you renegotiate for the second section of that and the third section of that, you're still going to have a lower tax number. But again, you wouldn't have the tax shift. This was never on the tax roll. So that's what kind of gets rid of that.
Which I don't think people, like, I don't even think the industry or other jurisdictions or other counties, as far as their assessors and stuff, understand how detrimental that is for that shift that goes on. You know, you have projects that are depreciating 8.5% per year, which That's not really accurate either, because based on my figures, it's about 5.5% is the effective depreciation, because the whole project is not depreciating. There's components of it, the real estate is not, there's other pieces of it that are not on the depreciation schedule. And so you've got the, in the case of wind, the turbines are depreciating 8.5%, but they're not 100% of the total value. And so the effective, at least based on our data going back 10 years, but it does average about 5.5% per year. So that 5.5% is shifting to the other taxpayers. And that's a real issue. And I think local government should have the option to, or not, if they want, they don't think it's a big deal, or if it's not a real big percentage of their overall tax base, it's not a big deal. In our case, it can be, or in certain districts too. For us, it's about a third, 30% of our tax rolls are depreciated. That's a big deal. If you're a big, or maybe you only have 1 or 2 projects and only, like those projects are only 5% of your tax base, who cares? It doesn't really matter.
50 megawatts.
You only got 50 megawatts, who cares? It doesn't really matter. But if as these projects are located in rural counties in eastern Washington, they tend to be big capital projects that have an oversized effect on the overall tax roll. We want to have this tool. Look at it, it's not mandatory. It's at the discretion of the government. I think I would like to have what that tool actually ends up being is going to have, the devil's in the details as far as what's that number.
Well, and to me is, campaigning on it last year, it needs fixed one way or the other, whether that's a legislative fix with the assessor, how she does business, or whether we can come up with a tool to our own way. How is this, when I talked to Cypress Creek earlier in the year, and we talked about this, is this something that was proposed to the legislature by the industry? Or is this something that
Mostly. I mean, mostly. There's been
8 counties that are interested in this, because I don't think they either have the projects or know it was a problem. So hopefully we can get in front of it before.
So I'd say there's also the other way that it's been done, and that's the way Idaho does it. And I think they currently charge 3.5% of gross sales. Over the time, if we're expecting electricity prices to go up, that might be one option that would then still pull it off, so we wouldn't have that tax shift, and then it could be more fair over time. Because what I don't like is that after 10 years, these things have depreciated down to whatever their sunk value is. It's 29 to 30 something percent. And then there's really no reason for the company to enter into another pill, because it's going to be in their favor to just pay the taxes on that sunk value. It's going to be cheaper no matter what. I see a lot of issues with this potentially, the way we're designing it, by putting a floor or a cap rather than a floor. It doesn't give us the ability for a lot of room for negotiation with these larger companies, and it seems like it's putting us in the second tier of a role. I don't know. I think it'd be good for us 3 to have a longer conversation about it, maybe this afternoon.
I agree, because to me, it's that 10-year thing too, because, if they're gonna last 30 years and they're gonna be able to pay this down every 10 years to where they're pretty much paying nothing. And then they're gonna come to us and say, well, yeah, but the value is depreciated, it's not worth nothing. But then when we do a decommissioning plan, they're gonna tell you that the panels are still with 85% of their value. So they're gonna want 85% scrap value. Well, we're going to need to take into their numbers into the decommissioning plan too. The numbers are the numbers. They can't have it both ways. But yes, longer conversation. It's almost 10 o'clock, sir.
That is a good point. It is now 10 o'clock. We're going to move into our discussion on the Board of Health. and where we left off. I guess I'll start. We've got changes that are going to be coming. They're still currently working on the WAC update, as I understand it. The RCW has been updated. And as I read the RCW, there's a lot of things in there that seem to contradict themselves. I don't know if you guys have had that same feeling.
Yep.
And so I think, before we go about appointing the next person on the Board of Health, I think it'd be a good idea to each of us say kind of where we feel this next Board of Health, we see it going. How many people do we feel we're going to have on it, and what goals and objectives we have. And if Aaron, if there's anything you'd like to say before we start the discussion, I'd be happy to entertain it. Come on up and make sure you yell.
Not really into yelling. I'll just wait. I found it confusing as well. I'm not sure how to proceed, so I think it'll be interesting to see what your recommendations are, because and this is my own lack of knowledge, but I'm struggling if the RCW is telling me one thing and then there's proposed WAC that doesn't matter, and how we're going to address that in the long term. So if it's just a matter of having a discussion today to kind of see where we're at, have it prepped to vote it in at the last second, maybe right before July 1st, so that we don't have to change it if we, I don't know what the right answer is, but I definitely have comments, but I think I should wait till the end, probably. Yeah.
It's very wise.
Well, I'm not sure where, I kind of have my own personal ideas, but I don't know what the board is thinking or moving towards, and I think it would help me to frame my comments to understand what the current opinions are.
Dan.
Well, as you probably know, I've done all the meetings. I consider myself well educated on this topic. Granted, nobody knows everything because it is written in ancient Greek or something, and it's hard to understand. But and everybody's got a different interpretation of it. But for the most part, you have to have an equal number of regular people as you do electeds. So if we're going to keep with just these 3 electeds, that would mean that we would need 3 regular, of which one of those regular has to be a tribal appointee. That's a given, that name is given to us by the tribal liaison. So that's one we don't have to worry about until July, and they will get us that information. So in reality, we're only dealing with 2 seats, just like the 2 seats we have now. The difference lies is there's 3 categories that you have to collect those 2 people from. If there's 3 categories, and they have to be from different categories. They can't be from the same category. So one category would be doctors, nurses, dentists, pharmacists, literally working the healthcare field. One would be liaison to the healthcare field, women, infant, child support, nutrition programs, that type of thing. And then the third one is community stakeholders, essentially people from the business community, active, retired, armed services, or anybody that's had a dealing with public health, which got under the COVID era. I'm pretty sure everybody in the world qualifies for option number 3. Option number 2 is a little more harder for me to grasp. So in my opinion, you need 1 person from the medical field, which is category 1, and 1 person from category 3, which is all others. And I would appoint accordingly, so that we don't have to change again come July 1st. But then again, whoever we appoint now, I would only appoint them until July 1st, so that we can have all of our Board of Health appointments concurrent on the same date of the year every year. I've already made 2 motions. to have an appointment for Dr. John Brewmeister. He's a local from this side of the county, because I believe of the two appointments we're going to get him made, since we don't make the tribal appointment, I think we need to have a cross representation of the entire county, as opposed to both individuals being on the District 1 side of the county, which is what we have now. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Commissioner Sauter, your thoughts?
I would concur with the assessment as far as the read of the RCW. I have I won't get into the actual individual appointments. But yeah, my read of it is that we're going to have 3 board of commissioners, and then the other 3, one of which will be a tribal member. It doesn't really specify in there. You know, that's up to them as far as who the appointment is, that they don't have, it doesn't have to be from one of those 3 categories. So we could end up with somebody that's doubled up in a category because their appointment may check that box, but we don't have any control over that. That's just a comment. And so, yeah, our 2 remaining ones, if we go with that system, have to come from those 3 categories. Public health, healthcare facility, basically providers, consumers of public health, and then stakeholders, which are the 3 different categories. I would say I don't, as far as the logistics of having everybody's terms expire simultaneously, I don't agree with. I think that's most boards and commissions have staggered terms for a reason, so that you have some continuity, some institutional knowledge. So I wouldn't favor that. I would favor, I don't know, I think during this legislative session, I hope there is some clarification of some of this stuff during the short session. And so I don't know that we need to necessarily take, this new makeup in these categories, we don't actually have to do it until July 1st. And so I don't know if I guess I would ask as far as, because right now, we actually only have 4 members on the Board of Health, because the 5th previous one, I believe the term expired December 31st. And so we have an open vacancy now under our current makeup of the board. I guess I would be curious from the health director's perspective, how handicapped are we with Board of Health operating with only 4 members for a short period of time versus just filling that position? Or do we fill a position with someone that we think qualifies for what's coming as it's configured now, not how it may be modified during this short session? But as I said, I concur with my read of the RCW is exactly the same as.
Well, and I guess I'll clarify, my appointments all being at the same time. The reason why whoever did this, I only wanted to do it for 6 months, was because that way, if we needed to change it because of new updates from the legislature, you wouldn't have to pull somebody in the middle of their term to make the fix that we may end up needing. So let's say, for instance, today we appoint John Brewmeister, who's a medical professional. That would give us 2 medical professionals, because I believe Paul Moyer is as well. We are now not current with the law as it sits on July 1st. And one of those 2 would need to leave and be replaced by somebody else. So it would still, it wasn't as much of a time for July 1st ending date to keep everybody on the same term. It was more of a, so we had a really fix whatever we do in the next 6 months. That comes down to then either Moyer would need to be replaced with citizen at large, or Brewmeister would need to be replaced with citizen at large. But
Commissioner Sauter, do you believe there's going to be legislative change this go around? Because we haven't seen anything introduced, have we?
House Bill 1152.
And what all is 1152 looking like?
So it just talks about how the local board of health membership is made and how the individuals are appointed. And it's still in draft. The form, the version I have is still in draft. There are some, it is in some alignment with the current RCW, but that was my concern, is that they're not 100% on board. So if you haven't reviewed it, you might want to do that before we kind of maybe finalize the plan of what we're going to do. Because this could potentially, and I just don't know how the WACs and RCWs end up, who gets, who's on first with that, but this could potentially change the final plan.
And I would agree, but everything could change the final plan, because by the Indian appointee, which is the American Indian Health Commission, they believe that the RCW is written that we have to have one tribal appointment from every tribe, every landholder, every deeded rights holder. God, it could be 5 or 6 different tribal members. So they're going to be trying to push the legislature for that as well. So Wasatch's opinion is they don't really know that they want to go in and have a legislative change, because that might not work in our favor. So whatever we do, it might only be for 6 months.
And they're currently in rulemaking right now. So, I mean, it's weird that the legislature would be looking to change it before the rulemaking is through to see if the legislature likes it anyways.
Right.
Right, I actually don't have a lot of, I don't think there will be a legislative change to the RCW. I don't think the RCW will change. I think this was too, I think it's baked in. It was heavily negotiated last year. I don't think the players have really changed. And so I think what we're going to see is more clarification during the rulemaking process. But as Aaron said, sometimes you end up with WACs that seem inconsistent to apply the RCW, even though that shouldn't even be possible. Considering the RCW is the governing law, this is supposed to implement the law. But if the WAC is implementing something that's inconsistent with the law, you should be able to make that rule. But we all know that does happen.
I guess so. So my thought though is if we're going to, if there's 3 different sections plus the tribal, one of our other options is we could add a city or 2 cities to the total. And then if we added 1 city, then we could have our tribal representative and then 1 from each of the 3 categories. And then everything would be hunky dory. And so that would be 8 people total. And I don't really mind that if the Board of Health has an even number, because it's not a decision-making group. It's more of a policy advisory group for the most part.
It has to be equal. You have to have equal representation elected.
Right.
Right, so if you added 2 city mayors, you would have to go to 10, because now you get 5 elected. So, but either way, regardless of that, I would be opposed to anything adding more electeds. When you do, I think you end up in a scenario like Yakima County has found themselves in, where the Board of Commissioners really don't have a whole lot of oversight of the Board of Health, and they tend to bicker and squabble and fight, and I'm trying to make sure that doesn't happen. So if it's the board's decision to add more electeds to the Board of Health, I will be opposed to that decision.
Commissioner Sauter, how do you feel?
I think I'd have to be convinced of that. I'm not sure what we get. I'm not necessarily opposed to it. I don't know that it doesn't work the way we're doing it now. And I'm kind of in favor of keeping our changes to the minimum that's required to implement the RCW as it exists today. Which is just, aligning our appointments to that we would have with those categories and inviting the tribal, I forget what the language is here, the health authority there, however it's referred to in here, to appoint someone for that 6th seat and go from there. I do think there needs to be some geographic parity between, I think we should not have, our 2 citizen appointees from the same area. I think we need to have diversity across the county, so there should be an east and a west. I'm not saying that necessarily has to be Goldendale, but not, both from White Salmon. And I would say it's unfortunate that, because I think our current or formerly current have done a great job. I think they've been really good Board of Health members. From my perspective, I don't think they have not served well just because they happen to both have lived. They're both in the West End. But that's not a disqualifying. But I think we have other qualified people to spread that out a little bit.
Commissioner Christopher?
Yeah, it's just, to me, if that's where we're going, we need to decide with the open appointment, number one, do we fill the open appointment or do we just leave it open until July? If we fill it, do we fill it with another public health person or a healthcare professional, which then we'd have to make another change come July? Or do we fill it with the citizen representative and then we may not have to make a change come July? If you fill it with and then you also have to decide whether you're separating White Salmon from Dallasport, Goldendale, getting another representative from this side of the county somewhere. It's my understanding, looking at the current applications for members of the Board of Health, there's Sue Paddington, who is a public health person or a healthcare professional. There's Sherry Medina, who's also a healthcare professional, and there's Dr. Brewmeister, who's also a healthcare professional. The only person that would fall into the citizen category is Pete Leon.
Mr. Commissioner, I believe we do have no, it's not a new one, but I believe is a teacher in the sciences.
Trout Lake. So that doesn't give you, it's a regular citizen, yes, but it doesn't give you the separation of a wider diversity of citizen involvement. I forgot about Mr. Pointer, sorry.
My personal feeling is, knowing that there's going to be changes coming either through the WAC or through legislation, and knowing that having one less person on the Board of Health for a month or two while they work these things out, to leave an open position so we don't have to make more changes in the future would be my preference.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Commissioner. Sorry.
Yeah, I don't feel compelled to do anything to take action. I don't know. I guess I would withhold my judgment on that until I hear from the health director as far as if there is. I mean, we have a pretty well set agenda as far as in the role of the Board of Health, as far as the kind of direction that we're in. I don't see earth-shaking decisions that have to be consulted on as far as in the next month or two, likely. And so I agree. I would be supportive of, let's just take our time and see, because I think the clouds will clear hopefully in a little bit in the next month or two. We can get a sense of where they are, and then because the way it is now, we are going to have to do something by July 1st, because that's when the RCW takes effect, and we will have to be in compliance then. But I would be fine with just leaving it open for the time being. I don't think that's gonna hurt us for the next month.
Commissioner Christopher, are you okay with that?
I guess I'm kind of torn on that. Because I think if a position's open and there's people that want it, even if it be temporary for 6 months, we should allow the citizens to represent their government. I'm kind of torn because we say there's, kind of nothing pressing and we can kind of get by for 2 months. And while that's true, in some regard, we still are in the middle of COVID, and I think people should be able to have a voice and represent their government. But again, as I've made 2 motions to fill the seat and they haven't been seconded, I can be the odd man out on this one as well. I'm fine with that.
My turn.
Yes, Aaron. Director Quinn.
So a couple of things, just like historical context. Typically, the Board of Health appointee has been the director recommending to the Board of Commissioners, and so certainly would want to have a role in who the appointee is. With our current Board of Health, I work with them all the time. They have been an invaluable support to me through COVID. I just can't tell you the amount of times they've taken phone calls and they've helped support. They've both over 100 hours of volunteer service each. They're showing up at our clinics every week. They are absolutely the picture of public health, and that's who I want to recruit to the board. They both understand the changes that are going to come. They both understand that they may not be in the seats at the end of the day, but are committed to making sure that the right people do get in those seats, as am I, because public health is what I do, and it's important to me that this county, and we may not all agree about what that looks like in this county, but I definitely am invested in doing the right thing for everyone and making sure that there is diversity and inclusion in the board, and for the people that are represented. I know it's frustrating that 2 people are from the West End, but it has not been attractive to be on the Board of Health for a really long time. We didn't have people that cared, we didn't have people that showed up. So this is a different time, and we're excited that we have people that are interested, but I think how we select those people and then making sure that they're representing the diversity of this county is going to be important. So I think, the WAC actually talks about how the Board of Health, they recommend that the Board of Health actually do interviews for the applicants before making a recommendation to the Board of Commissioners. And while that is still in draft form, I would ask the commissioners to consider doing that so that there's just, there's more opportunity to ask for why they want to be on the Board of Health and understanding what their why is and how they're planning to serve our community. I think that's going to be really important for us. So, and then lastly, we don't have to make a decision until July. I would recommend to the Board of Commissioners that you consider reinstating Sue for a term of 6 months. She's been on the Board of Health for 4 years. She understands that she's going to have to transition out, and I think that she'll be a really valuable asset to help the incoming people do that transition, to hand off and help make recommendations for who will be on the board and what that's going to look like in the future. She worked at the health department in the 90s. She's been in this county for a long time. And all of the same, they both have a lot of local experience in public health in this county. They know what diversity and inclusion looks like. And I think their opinions moving forward in what the board and how that's going to change are going to be invaluable. So that's my comments.
Thank you, Director Quinn. Do we have any further direction that we'd like to go with this? Gentlemen?
I don't think so at this time.
Okay. All right.
Nothing is an action.
Sorry, I can't see anything. Someone raised their hand on my screen.
Hi, Commissioner Anderson. Hi, it's Vern Harpoon. If I could just one quick comment.
Vern, this is not a public hearing or a public meeting. I would love to have you give me your comment offline, if you wouldn't mind.
Okay,
Yeah, we won't be making any decisions right now, so send me an email or give me a call later today, or I can reach out to you.
I was hoping you'd put it out for public comment to all the citizens of Klickitat County.
There is 1 o'clock today for public comment. You can also give your comment then.
Okay,
Thank you, Vern. All right, thank you, Director Quinn. It is 10:25. I guess let me know when Gordy and Jeff show up.
Here. Here, over here. Before we start, I'm gonna look at windows. Sure.
good to see you.
Sure.
Good morning.
Me too.
Yeah.
It's scary.
Yeah.
I'm like, there's all these spikes.
Yeah, if you haven't heard about it, then I guess that's a good thing.
Good thing.
Okay.
We have a possibility.
Was that what that is?
Yes.
Yes. Somebody thought it was different.
What is it?
School bus.
Oh.
Gentlemen, whenever you're ready.
Okay. We have a couple items on your consent agenda. The first one is a resolution, a matter of reviewing our 2021 equipment rates. And so we're letting those ride, or we let them ride after reviewing them in 2021. Our plan is to have new equipment rates out in March of this year. That will be effective at the first of the year. So we'll just hold off on entering equipment costs until we get those rates in place, and then we charge them on that. Yeah. So that's the plan this year. Item number 2 is a resolution to reauthorize investments of the public works funds. It's required every year to do this. So Pam, who's the Deputy Director for Finance and Administration in our department, and myself. So we have money that we feel we can invest and won't cause a cash flow problem, then we'll invest it. Item number 3 is a concurrence to award small works contract with Pacific Northwest Environmental and the county for asbestos removal of the chambers and HR in the courthouse. That'll facilitate us moving forward with improvements there. Their office is a chamber of the building. Item number 4 is a concurrence to award a small works contract between Coburn Electric, and this is for our on-call electrical contractor for this year. 2022. They were below. On the construction side, everything is shut down. We officially suspended work on the Roosevelt Great Road project, and the remaining work will have to wait till the snow is gone, so they can have some room to install signs and guideposts. And it's the same with the grant funded signs and guideposts. You can't put the signs in very effectively with the Burma snow rolled off on where the signs go. So we'll have good weather again, and they'll get back out there when the time's right. On the design side, Courtney Road's the big thing, so we're still planning on opening bids on the 25th. And we'll probably have an addendum out on it before too long. We're answering questions right now. I think there are 4 bidders signed up now. And then Klickitat Path, still working on the design of that project and basically permitting archaeological review. And then our parking lot work. Might as well talk about the parking lot. So we talked about setting up a time to review need for parking around the courthouse and the new annex building and Annex 1. And so next week,
Is that what we are now? Or no, never mind, sorry. I
yes,
thought we were calling, this was now the new annex one.
no,
No,
it's, yeah.
The old annex one.
Yeah, so Annex 1, we talked about, there's a need for parking there, what's the need and what are our other options? So next week, if, in the afternoon, we talk about scheduling a time in the afternoon, not our regular 10 o'clock or 10:30 update, to have maybe a half hour to present the need and options and costs and
Workshop next Thursday as well.
yeah, whenever you guys want to schedule it. Would Thursday be better?
Doesn't matter to me, I just don't know how full her Tuesday.
It's already on the schedule for Tuesday, but
There we go.
All right,
That's good.
all right, problem solved. But a half hour seemed like about the right amount of time to do this. If you feel like you need more, I think my presentation won't last much more than about 10 or 15 minutes, and then that leaves time for.
What time did you have that on
I'd have to go back and look. I believe it's,
I'm just thinking if we put it close to the citizen comment period, at least those citizens that are interested might still be there to hear that.
right. I will move that up as close as I can.
Thank you. Okay. We still have all of our on-call RFPs out there being advertised, and we'll open those up and select consultant services. On the maintenance side, the guys were busy last week, whether it was here around the buildings and our facilities or out on the roads. We were still kind of cleaning up from that. West side, they are still cleaning up trees and branches that fell down during last week's event at the end of the week. And then they're widening roads and just responding to whatever the weather brings this week. It shouldn't be much, or isn't scheduled very much, so it'll give us time to clean up. On Goldendale East, we're widening roads as well. Cold mix patching, the time when we start to develop potholes. So there's enough work to keep those guys busy as well on this side. Let's see, work continues on this building. All the punch list items and unfinished work. So chlorine, last week we created a punch list for the final floor. Furniture, guest chairs arrived this week, and the remaining furniture will trickle in through the end of May. You never know if those dates will hold or get pushed out. So blinds, we're still waiting on a scheduled date. I think our contractor's having trouble with their sub getting them out here to install the proper blinds that we actually specified. HVAC units, the balancing work is complete. They also discovered some of the ducting was not lined, and so they're gonna have to go back and replace those pieces. And then they also are looking at some of the units of dialing back the speed on the fan coils and to quiet them down. So that's kind of what they're working on for.
Worried about that. The way to quiet them is to not put air in the system. When it gets hot, you might not be getting air through your system.
Yeah, they have to still supply enough air. And that's the challenge for them, is being able to do that and get it quiet enough, some of them. Whether that's possible on the one that's out here in the entryway or not, find out. But they still have to meet the requirement for providing enough air and circulation.
So are we gonna have to pay for them to come in there and make these adjustments and changes? Or is that part of the bid?
Yeah, they have to perform if it's, I don't know what the solution 100% is. These are the things that they're gonna try, and they shouldn't cost us anything. Some of the things should have been done, like the line ducting should have been installed properly. Dialing back the speeds, they have to, I mean, they can't have something that's almost 70 dB sound, it's not acceptable. We won't pay for that kind of stuff. But like I said, I don't know if these simple fixes will solve the problem or not. And then we'll have to go from there as what the solution is.
I mean, it's kind of the same issue that we're having with the audio visual stuff is that, yeah, sure, it blows air, but it definitely doesn't meet specs, anybody's standards. But we didn't, specify the standards when we wrote it, right? It didn't say it had to be under 70 dBs.
Well, there's requirements out there, guidelines for what kind of sound levels you should have. And I think about 50 to 55 dB is kind of the office environment noise level. So
Uh-huh.
that's what we have here, and that's what we would expect
Okay.
in the end. So some of
Just so
the,
long as we're not the ones paying to get it down there when we didn't design it, some engineer did somewhere.
right,
And I assume we still have some ability, like we haven't paid for it.
No.
So we have retaining, I mean, that's part of the reason we have retaining is to settle that, keeps everybody at the table because if you have disputes over, there's still this money sitting over here that we're not releasing until we
Right.
are all happy.
Yeah.
And I think it's unreasonable for us to be happy that, if it's 70, which, I mean, it is, it's unworkable.
Yeah.
Whether it was in the design specs or not, you can't use an office because it's so loud, you can't even talk on the phone. There's a difference between that and it's like, well, it's a little noisy, but it's workable. That gets into it's subjective. My office is not subjective. I can't talk on the phone because nobody can hear me. Because it's like, where are you? Are you at the airport?
Or you recommended the other.
Exactly. It is yeah, you don't want that one. They get lots of fresh air, but everybody always thinks I'm calling the airport runway. Yep, I'm just getting on a plane right now. The taxiway. I think we'll get it figured out.
Yeah.
They've been a good contractor, and generally people want things they don't want it to be difficult because people talk to each other and you're like, yeah, we have this problem, we have this design problem, but we got it figured out. That's actually going to be a positive thing because there's always going to be little issues and that really kind of goes to the strength of what kind of firm it is if you're able to work those things out. If everything's wonderful, then we'll never know as far as how it was to solve the problem, how that works. So I think we'll get through it.
we will.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see, still working on and waiting for materials for the work in HR and weed. We were able to get almost all the panic buttons reinstalled over here in the departments except for WSU and economic development, so 2 more to go. So working through those changeovers and still working on our parking expansion. Let's see, courthouse entry, hoping we can finish that up, get the doors open here, maybe this week, depending on weather.
I think you're being
Optimistic.
optimistic.
Yeah. Let's see, HVAC units, no change, still planning to install those new equipment in Pioneer 7 and courthouse. Radio.
Radio, we're starting design. We actually got the survey for the site. We didn't get the whole road, but the site. So the consultant is starting the design of that. We're executing the roads. When we get the topo out there, it's a little difficult.
Jeff, do we have any cellular companies or anyone else that's interested in partnering with us on this tower?
Not that I've heard of yet, Jake. When I talk to PUB again, I'm gonna ask, I have another meeting with them over the sewer plant, but I'll ask them what their opinion is, because I've heard that they have talked about, they were gonna be at Red Tail, but I don't know about Satan's. But as far as cell towers, I don't know. Cell tower provider would probably be better off going to the WashDOT site, because it's up on top of the pass and they can get over the valley. Our site is intentionally not there because we didn't want the feedback from the valley. We picked up all that static, so ours is on this side of the pass. So I don't know, I haven't heard anything that we're just up the hill from US Cell too. So.
Right. I couldn't remember if there's an AT&T tower up there or not.
I know there was talk. I don't know if they ever built it.
Okay, continue on.
All right, so snow removal last week, there were some calls that came in and we have new people, so they're learning as well, but we have a snow turnaround, a school bus turnaround that we plow out at Glenwood Highway and 142. So there's, if you're familiar with, there's like an old commercial building that was built and has been unfinished for at least 15 years. And so we plow outside. So I apologize, Jake, I don't think we sent you copies of the photos, but you can, if you look at it, you can see we plow out into their parking area for the school bus to turn around. And there were complaints that we were plowing somebody's property and around the business. So you can kind of see there's a place where we plowed and all their vehicles and up to the building, it's still got all the snow there. So we plow out for the school bus to turn around and that's it. So anyway, I know that Lee got a call, just wanted to follow up.
We have others. We have other places throughout the county where we plow for school bus turnarounds.
Yeah, or whether there are turnarounds or school. That's just part of what we do. But sometimes people get the wrong idea. So just wanted to follow up.
You do?
Yeah. Sometimes.
Used to be.
Well, let's see. So Fish and Wildlife has requested use of a portion of the fairgrounds to land a helicopter. And they need to plug in some equipment and then store some nets that they have that they're going to use to capture deer and do some study next week. So they're going to be renting some of our facility at the fairgrounds to do that. So this one, what's that? Yeah.
I like the word rent.
Yes. And then I also have a request. We had one of our road construction inspectors turn in notice that they will be leaving employment in the county on the 2nd of February. And we'd like to replace them. So at this position, most years, at least 50% of their salary is reimbursable by grant funds. And we really have to have somebody out there if we're taking grants, federal and state grants, to meet the requirements for documentation and auditing WashDOT and the state auditors. So there's a lot to manage for documentation. Inspectors are critical. So we'd like to ask permission to refill that position.
You got a thumbs up.
I gave you a thumbs up. Sorry, I was trying to hit the unmute button.
Thank you. And that's it for the list this week.
Have we had any interest in Courtney Road yet? Have many people been picking up packets?
There's 4 contractors that are signed up. It's likely there's others. We've talked to others. they don't, it's not required that they sign up on Builders Exchange to bid. And sometimes they don't want others to know that they're gonna bid. That's a
Right.
strategy, so.
Okay, now, Commissioner Sauter.
You mentioned, is it a possibility of an addendum? Is that something you can share why?
Just minor items that the contractors
Are
are
asking
called.
questions on it, so the addendum would just verify that kind of covers those
Right,
things that
yes,
people are asking questions about, so they can't say, oh, I didn't know.
Yes.
right. We do question stuff and that clarifies stuff, and it's pretty common to have those on a job of this size.
I mean, I've seen them, I mean, we've had, 2 and 3 addendums sometimes. Usually I don't like to see that, because then it's, like, I can recall we've had a, where someone only, they acknowledge, but they missed one of them, and then it's like, oh, it's a non-responsive bid.
Yes,
Because, so, okay, I just want to make sure there wasn't some issue that we were, that we have discovered that we have to add.
And that's one of the risks of not signing up on the Builders Exchange. Those people that sign up get notified automatically that there's an addendum.
yes,
The other bidders that don't sign up, they'd have to keep looking
yeah.
To see it.
to see if something changed. And that's the risk they're willing to take.
Yeah.
Commissioner Christopher, any questions?
Yeah, back to Courtney Road questions and snow questions. How does that work on Courtney? I was reading a Facebook post of some chicken that was halfway up there. Yeah, probably bad word, but anyway, wanting a ride out to get to the grocery store. When we pave this thing, are we gonna have to put guardrails on all those little embankments where you can go flying in the snow and ice? How's that gonna work for our plow, our graders, our sanders? Are we gonna actually try to keep up on this thing when it's got 6 inches of snow on it? Is it gonna be possible?
Yeah, it's a collector. We have guardrail on it currently, and we'll be upgrading a lot of it. In the new section, we'll be adding more where it's required and warranted. And then we'll be required to maintain it just like any other collector, the paved collector, which is a higher level of maintenance.
What about, I mean, so yes, we are planning on sanding it and graveling it.
Yes.
Yeah.
God, I hate to go down there.
Yeah.
Gravel truck. I think they're interesting. Okay, snow piles out here, who's in charge of those? I'm assuming like this parking lot we are.
Yeah, all of our lots we are responsible for. Yeah.
What about, let's say, Grant Street, since that's a city street, what, the parking on each side of it? The piles there, is that us or is that city?
We have piles there. I'm not sure where the city, I haven't looked at where they windrowed their material. I know they came back this morning early and cleaned up Court Street. And I think it's kind of a slow process for them. But typically, even on Court in past years, they just windrow it. It's a big pile there and we lose that parallel parking part of it throughout the year.
What are our plans out here? Pile removal to give us back our parking or let it melt?
I think we were just kind of taking a breath before we do something more, but yeah, in the past, we have removed that, as we have staff and equipment to do that.
Same idea, we're on the parking over here. I think we still have issues with county employees parking in these 4 spots that aren't handicapped here, that we said safe for the public. And parking with their government vehicles and personal vehicles. I don't know how we remedy that situation from here other than send another warning email.
Yeah, we could, we can at different times periodically throughout the day, we can look at license plates and find out whose vehicles they are.
It's throwing
And notify the
something,
others.
because it's, yeah, we need to keep those parking spots up. Last thing, what are the chances of Trout Lake flooding as we get into the next week or two? And are we prepared for any possibility? We have sand up there available, sandbags available. We're not gonna be caught behind the eight ball on this.
And Jeff King has sandbags staged at different locations, and then if the need arises, we haul sand to those locations in an emergency. So sandbags, yes, are covered. Luckily, I think last week we were kind of worried because it looked like we'd get a lot of moisture at the end of the week that wasn't snow. And we had a lot of snow stacked up, but it stayed cold and we didn't get as much moisture. So the 96 event, it's a lot of snow stacked up, and then the temperature, the snow elevation went way up and everything melted and rained. And so far we haven't seen that.
Right.
And so
I
I think
just want to make sure we have the supplies if needed.
yes,
End of my questions. Thank you, guys.
welcome.
One question I had, Gordy, individuals plowing county roads, is that frowned upon? Or do you guys accept the help when individuals, because it might be days before the county can get there? And then are they assuming the liability, any liability if they're plowing on a county road?
And we have issued permits for people to do work on the road, and it'd be better if people called us before they just did it.
Okay,
Then we can talk about it and work through those kind of details.
yeah, I'm not thinking, when we contract out, but just, people are trying to get out and, it's not a collector road and it might be far down, or it might be a road that there's now houses on a county road where there used to be no houses on it. I was Nestor Peak Road, which is a county road, was brought up to me recently by a constituent saying they can't get out. They've got to go, and it's a county road.
Yeah, if you just point them in our direction, we'll talk to them and work it out. I mean,
Okay.
We've had people do work, private citizens, get permits to do work on roads, so that's possible.
Okay. That is all I had. Commissioner Sauter, anything else? All right, thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
And please tell all of your snowplow drivers, thank you for all the overtime and all the work they've been putting in, as well as the grounds crew. They've been doing a great job.
We'll do it. Later.
All right, see you. Oh, and thanks, Jeff, for sending that. Sure. Wastewater stuff. Okay.
All right, board pending. Gentlemen, what do you have?
I would say not a lot. I might have some later, but not much.
Commissioner Sauter, is there anything you had?
No, not that I would add to the earlier discussion we had about the solar taxation stuff.
That's kind of the only thing I was wanting to talk about is the solar taxation thing. I don't see that 4,500 is gonna be enough based on the value. I think that is pretty much a gift to these solar companies. But I haven't fully run the numbers, but when I look at, say you pay $8,000 today for year number one is worth a lot more today than it is, say, 5 years from now. We need to be capturing the cost, the opportunity cost of money and the net present value of those dollars. You figure every year you lose 4% value minimum on those dollars. And if we were able to get the dollars today and bank them or somehow get some sort of return on those dollars, we'd be better off than averaging it over 10 years at a reduced amount. Unless that amount can incorporate those additional costs. I know we do it differently with the landfill. My first thought though is that the way that they do it in Idaho, where it's, a percentage of growth, then you gain and lose with them and with the economy and with the price of power over time. That might have more upside for the county over the long run than what's currently there, because that would remain over the course of the entire lifespan of the project versus, if it sinks out at 29% after 10 years and it's going to be producing power for 30 years, that doesn't seem really equitable over the long term.
It's gonna be making more in year 15 than it makes in year 1. We're just gonna
Right.
get revenue from it. And I mean, this is better than nothing, but it's obviously what they want, which is about pretty close to nothing in their eyes. And I agree with you that the way Idaho does it is a better, fairer for the counties over the long term. If there was a possibility to get it that direction this late in the game.
I don't disagree with that. The only comment I make, and I don't have any way to, we can do some, I think we need to do a lot more research on what the actual numbers are and what other, because, at this point, most of what we're working on as far as in other places is provided by them. And I don't necessarily believe that. Because they are going to send their PowerPoint that they use. They had 3 or 4 slides with some statistics on them, which I wanted because I want to be able to verify those numbers. But based on they were showing the Idaho model, which is a percentage of it. If their numbers are accurate, they pay about 30% of the taxes in Idaho that they do here in Washington or in Oregon using that method. So they pay a gross, but what that calculates into in Idaho is these projects pay much less taxes in Idaho than they do here or in Oregon. And so I'm not saying the method is necessarily wrong, but what it generates in revenue if you're using the Idaho numbers is a lot like and that's part of the reason why the projects are going to get built. That's the argument they're making, is when you look at the tax schemes in other states, you want to be competitive, and they're saying that our taxing system in Washington makes it less competitive, that these projects will just get built somewhere else. And that's an
Which
argument.
is exactly what's happening today, is like that county, they're going to Idaho.
Right.
They're gonna get built here, they're just arguing for the lowest tax rate they can possibly pay.
I agree. They've been currently, they're getting built here. They have been getting built here. And when they say we don't have a tax structure that's equitable to them to build them here, well, that doesn't make any darn sense to me when they're already doing it. Sounds like you're just trying to get a better deal.
Right.
And you're blowing a whole lot of smoke.
Well, they're a private company, and a private company is always gonna look after their best interest. So that's what they're doing. I don't fault them for it. Any private company is gonna do the same thing.
I said, I don't have any issue with the current, the only issue I have with the current system and the rates that are being paid is just that depreciation. I don't really have I got no dog in the fight as far as the amount and what it is. I think it's equitable and it's treated the same as any other asset that you pay taxes. If it's worth more, you pay more taxes. That's just how our system is. The issue I have that bothers me is that depreciation and that shift that's going on really translates into it's a tax increase for the regular taxpayers that they don't know about, didn't have any say about, and are basically unaware. And that doesn't seem so. if there's a way to get rid of that, I'm in favor of that.
And like I said, I think what you're gonna find as we go forward is the want to double dip. Because those panels are still gonna be putting out in 30 years, they're still gonna be running at a good 80-85% efficiency. And they're still gonna be making 85% of their revenue today, add inflation to that. But yet they're gonna try to give us this whole tax deal or pill deal as a much reduced number. And then when they do their decommissioning bond, they're gonna try to say, oh no, the value is 85%. So it needs to, they need to be aware that those numbers need to drive. If they're gonna try to say, oh no, our project is only 30% efficient in 25 years, then you need to come up with a 7% retained bond. Because you're the one that gave me the number. You can't have it both ways.
No, I mean, I would much rather, I think the depreciation schedule is not correct. I think it should be based more on power production. Because yeah, 10 years in, you know, it's depreciated 8.5% per year. They depreciated down to, you know, 25 or 30% of the value. That project is not worth, it has not devalued by 70%. They're just paying 70% less. Yeah, it's likely, it really hasn't, it's only, even using their numbers where their efficiencies have gone down, and it's only, you know, so maybe their power production has declined, you know, 5%. It's actually more profitable. They make more money, but their tax burden went down 70% and their production went down 5%. They are not connected to each other. The value should be tied to the taxes should be valued on the production of what the income as far as what they're
Ideally,
doing.
however you want to do it, ideally to me it's taxed based on the income or a percentage of the income. Any other way is better than what we have, it just isn't right.
So I guess the one issue we'd have is that in Oregon, they could do that, but in Washington, we can't institute an income tax. And if you base it on income, that it's against the, you know, state law.
No, because right now of the three ways the assessor can value it every year is one of them is an income based model. The problem is as she testified, she doesn't have the staffing to do such a thing. She would have to hire out every year at a cost of what I think she said $80,000 to do the assessments on an income method. And right now, the Department of Revenue recommends that she use costs, so that's what she's doing. If we could get the legislator or the Department of Revenue to recommend income, whether her staff does the taxation model or we hire a private firm to do that, we would probably be much better off over the course of 30 years. It is a doable thing now, it's just the assessor would have to want to do it that way. And right now she's following guidance to not do it.
So I wonder if there's a way that we can find a valuation that's equitable, which in Idaho, I think it's 3.5%, but say it was 5% of gross, and that would be a pill, and then just have it set at 5% of gross for the life of the project. To me, that would be a more equitable distribution that would continue to bring in dollars at a roughly the same amount, adjusted for inflation over the course of 30 years.
And use their revenue numbers so that we don't have to hire someone for 80 grand to go do an estimate and evaluate their project.
Right, but these large projects have purchase power agreements.
Right.
And
it
so
should be an
that's
easy
in
number to
contract.
find the revenue number
Right.
and just take whatever percent from that. I like that. I know that the solar company would like it, but yeah.
What are your thoughts, Dave?
I don't know. I mean, it's, you know, this is their shot at it too. I don't know that anything's gonna happen. And again, anything that they, I mean, that's one thing about this, is say they, you know, this flies through the legislature, they adopt it the way they drafted it, whether we like, it's still optional. It's not a requirement. They're stuck with the current taxing system. It's at the Board of Commissioners' discretion whether they have the tool or would want to use it. So,
So it's at our discretion, not their discretion, which way they want to do it.
Yep.
I was understanding.
no, it's not mandatory. It's not.
Well, I knew it wasn't mandatory. I thought this just gave them another avenue. They can choose which one they want.
No, the county chooses. which method. And so you may have counties, again, like I said, that if the traditional way of doing it does generate more revenue, but it's that goes on the tax rolls and then it depreciates and the shift is taking place. There could be jurisdictions because that's going to generate the most amount of money. They're going to choose, no, that's what we want to do. We don't care about the shift because it's not a big deal. You could have other ones where they would they would say, I'd rather get $4,500 a megawatt and it doesn't go on the tax rolls and it's good they may. So I mean, ultimately it will be the county will decide if it's like the legislature could pass it, but if it's the local option. You know, at this point, I don't know that I would support this option
So
as they're drafting.
theoretically, if this passes, we could still work out a legislative
Yep.
fix to allow or have the Department of Revenue recommend to the assessor that she does it based off of income as opposed to cost. But we're still up to the assessor whether she or me, whoever
Right.
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 Wants to do it.
Right. I mean, the assessor ultimately decides how to assess. And this,
Right.
that's why this is a pill. So it's outside of.
But I think we still get pressure there because I think the depreciation schedule in 15 years that's set for windmills needs to have another one set for solar that's 30 years that they can add to as an amendment into that existing.
Well, I mean, you can make the same argument with wind because it's not like in year 15, those things fall down and don't generate more power.
Yeah, but they've all been upgraded.
Well, right.
Solar, I don't think so.
I don't think that was a question was asked about repowering yesterday. They said, you know, it will likely happen because of efficiencies, but it is probably more 15 or 20 years out because you're not going to have it's unlikely that you're going to see such big changes in efficiency that would warrant repowering.
They say 3% per year. Efficiency loss.
Well, then why, so why does their equipment depreciate at 8%?
But even then, if you figure 3% per year, you know, at the end of 20 years, you're only at 50% efficiency. Right, that's bad math.
Right. So I don't know. I have less heartburn about all of it because again, as long as it's local option, I wish we had that model all the time where the legislature did stuff that was optional. And then if it was something crappy, we would say, yeah, no thanks, doesn't fit for
As I
us.
said, I have less heartburn now that I know.
Yeah.
But trying to get as much.
So I'm not gonna lose any sleep over
Right.
if this passes that we're not thrilled with it.
But I'd still.
Right,
Adjusting
but-
things. Seeing, yeah.
I'd rather
But
make
if
it
this is our-
something that.
if this is our one shot though, to have our say in it, because if this passes, the legislature's not gonna come through next year and pass another one.
No.
And so I would say that we need to try to push and amend it to what we would like or what we would like to actually implement. And then also add to it, you know, right now, these companies, they're gonna use union labor, which isn't primarily gonna come from Klickitat County. And they're gonna save a bunch of money on their sales tax on top of it. So we're not gonna get that. So if we could also add in there the change so that at least the county portion of the sales tax actually comes to the county. I think we give enough. If you know what I
So
mean.
are you saying try to put an amendment on this bill to try to
If
keep
we-
the sales tax in the county?
Yeah,
Or do you think it would be wise to, I guess I would say, take their language in their bill, change the language to what we want, and give a side-by-side comparison of here's what they want, here's what we want.
well, I think the discussion is this.
Sales tax thing stays.
It's easier to run or to amend that bill and run it through as one bill than to have two competing bills sitting out there. Because when you have two competing bills, the legislature usually says, well, why don't you go back and figure it out and come back to us next year?
Yeah, I don't disagree on the sales tax part, but I think just from a procedural way, I don't think that's possible. Like, we have all this sort of wish list of things that we want to get. Because I think the sales tax exemptions is in a completely different part of the tax code and
That needs to be a different bill. If just the sales tax part.
Right.
I suspect, I don't know. I mean, it is like we do, we don't, because it is, we have these projects that are coming. We're getting less benefit locally because they don't use a lot of local labor typically. And we're not getting any sales tax because they're pretty much sales tax exempt now. The state has made it that way. And now they want to pay less in property taxes too. And so it gets to that point of how supportive of the industry can you be in your county where the equation gets to be to the point where, maybe you don't want to encourage these things because the net benefit is not necessarily, because there are impacts from them. And it's,
Or you don't want to encourage it until it's actually valuable to the county.
right.
Good point.
That's the math that's going on. That's the calculus of how, and it is, in my mind, it's different. I mean, it's obviously different for wind projects than solar projects. The math is different. And they even, actually this bill, they amended this bill, because you remember in the draft, it had a blank for the PILT on potential PILT for wind. And they have negotiated they unofficially had said, but that figures out $8,500 for wind. So it's $4,500 for solar and $8,500 for wind, because they are saying, they're indicating that capital, that wind pays higher taxes because of the cost, that solar is cheaper to install per megawatt. And so using the current system, you're not going to generate as much per megawatt in tax revenue if you set a wind project and a solar project side by side, which then why anybody would even build wind, because when you're selling the product, if it costs twice as much to produce them, you're not going to make as much money. The solar is going to be more profitable than wind. And that's what I'm curious, like the math doesn't jive.
Especially when you start adding in land leases and, into their costs. Yeah,
Dave, doesn't that come down to the federal tax exemptions and how it works out?
I mean, that's what they indicated, like they get right now, and it is getting smaller. What do they call it?
There's an industrial exemption and then there's the wind turbine.
Because they get theirs up front. Solar gets theirs up front 30%. Wind, it's a production tax credit, so it phases in over a period of time. And so I think it goes back to that. What's the value of the money? He was so I don't know that, that the tax systems are different as far as the federal tax credits are different for wind and solar. But that's what I need to be is there any legitimacy if you change nothing, are these solar farms gonna go on the tax rolls at the same value as our historically the wind farms or not? Because we don't know at this point. We will get a real life thing this year. It's the one it's going live, the one out, the first one that was constructed. It will get assessed taxes for payment in 23. So then we'll know, but at this point, we're speculating on all of this.
Does this bill have anything in it, which we doubt it, because the solar farm is only looking at themselves and not anybody else? But is there anything in it that would affect how we tax the landowner for their property use? Or if we charge them an income method for the income they're generating on their property? Not we,
Their
the
lease.
assessor.
The assessor.
Yeah. Because that was gonna be something that I don't think a lot of the leaseholders realize.
Yeah, I don't know. No, there's nothing in this. There's no, I mean, it's only 2 pages, so it's.
So I didn't figure the solar company was looking out for the leasers there. So. I don't know, I wasn't.
Yeah, I mean, the bad thing in a sense is that we are on the cutting edge because we're out there as far as in Washington State. It's there's others coming, there's stuff going, but we're the ones out on the edge.
That's my worry is we're gonna have all of our projects done and complete, and the taxing is gonna be set, and then the state's gonna fix it 10 years from now, or everybody else. And we would have lost out on what we could have had.
Yes, we should be able, there is the solar project up, was it in Stevens County or somewhere out in the Central Basin? Up by Davenport, I think, that we should be able to look and see exactly how it worked out.
That's what I need, is I need some real world Washington numbers to just check. Like my point has always been, I don't want to soak them. I'm not trying to, but I want it to be equitable and fair. And I don't want that. I don't want the depreciation on the tax rolls. I think that is a super negative thing for our citizens. Especially for some junior taxing districts, because we're only looking at it from like the county general fund and the county road fund where it's 30%. You have districts that they could, like if you park one of those projects in a small district, it might increase they'll get this huge influx of cash. Like they could, double or triple their revenue, but then they don't have any ability to not keep getting that much. And then so it's not shifting 8% per year. It might be shifting 10, 15% per year as that is depreciating down. And
Or even the bigger districts. Fire district. 7's a big fire district, but as you triple the value of the land in 7, are they really gonna lower their numbers when it's all said and done?
They're gonna
get 7.
And the juniors, at least they would have, just like we would, we actually could adjust our levy rate if we chose to.
Right, but will they?
Well, but will they? But you also have to trust the, folks are locally elected, and if they're not doing what they're supposed to do, they get rid of it.
No.
Well, they'll know eventually, they'll know. But you have to understand that a big chunk of what we pay, we don't set, it's state school. The legislature sets it. And I can guarantee you, they're not gonna give it back. They're not gonna say, oh, that's depreciating. And we're shifting this big burden to the local
But
taxpayer.
this is a very confusing
It is.
argument that literally took me years to understand. How are you going to get the general public to understand it? Or the junior districts and whatnot?
Well, it's gonna have to be the understanding of your levy, that's the high, that's your maximum allowable levy. Doesn't mean you have to take it.
We don't need new fire trucks.
But it's really hard. And and the state is not going to, they max it out every year. They're not gonna give it back. It's never gonna happen. And so even if we wanted to, we don't have the ability to mitigate for that much depreciation. we can't do it. If we said, oh, we're gonna take less revenue every year by the amount of the depreciation, so that our taxpayers are basically paying the same amount every year to the county general fund. We have that ability to do that, but it wouldn't really change the tax bill because we're only a little piece of it.
Right.
So we're
In a
adjusting.
situation like this, they start rolling in money, they start building high schools and middle schools and juniors, and then 10 years from now, they still have those payments. Right. But all of a sudden, they're depreciated out. The county's paying payments for that house. So that's what we need to sooner rather than later.
No, I want to
Some
fix it,
way.
I just to fix it.
The problem is educating people to understand what we're talking
Anything else for the good of the order?
about.
All right, well, Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to adjourn until 1 o'clock.
There's a motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
I
Motion carries. See you boys in a while.
Should have asked.
good
I
luck.
know.
Yeah.
And it is, it's tough to be like,
Aspired to that.
Right over in that corner.
you know what?
I already know that.
Being 1 o'clock, we will call the regular business meeting to order for the January 11th for the Board of County Commissioners. If everyone would please stand, we will start with the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd entertain a motion for the business agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve the business agenda with one add-on under new business. Building development request for authorization to lease an IQ Material X 4400 scanner.
Should be Canon, sorry.
That first purchase.
No, the scanner is from Canon.
Right. Well, it said it, IQ Catero was the model.
That is right, but I see I had Connor.
Okay.
Canon.
Yep, no, I've had that subscription.
Great.
From Canon for the monthly cost of $195 for a 36-month period.
I'll second the motion.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Moving on to the meeting minutes.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion to approve the commissioner meeting minutes from December 28th, 2021 as presented.
Second the motion.
There is a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And I will abstain as I was not there. So please let the record show. Motion carries. We will now move into citizen comment until 1:25. Individuals will have 3 minutes. You don't have to use all 3 minutes of your time. And commissioners will respond if they choose at 1:25. So don't expect a response from whatever you say right then. We will start in the room as we usually do. If someone would like to give public comment, please come forward. I see, come on up.
And then just come up to there and speak loud to make sure everybody can hear you. Take the mask down when you speak so everybody can hear you.
It's a muffler too. Dave West, Centerville. The legislative session reminds me of the OMAC wild horse race. That's what we're about to watch. The Riparian bill, I certainly request the county stand in opposition against it as it is. It could truly be devastating to agriculture throughout the state, not just our county. The attempt from the 2 senators who's decided they're going to fix Klickitat County so we can't use hounds to chase destructive wildlife anymore. I don't think I've ever seen their names on our ballots. And regardless of what the topic is, I'm against the state cutting off local control for anything. And then as an item of note, the State Farm Bureau hopes, well, we intend on having finished this week and filed an amicus brief that supports the track D lawsuit on behalf of the county. That's all I have.
Sir?
Thank you, guys.
All right, next online, we have the first hand up is Vern Harpoon.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Vern Harpoon. I live in Lyle. I speak to you today with 52-year career perspective in public health. My testimony today is to provide my ideas on how to go about the process of expanding the Board of Health from 5 members to 6 per the recent RCW changes that was discussed in the morning's meeting. My first just thought that I'm sure has all crossed your mind is the RCWs will require you to have an even number of board members, which is ridiculous. So you have to consider that, and I'm sure you already have. But beyond that, I just am here with a real positive note to, I want you to kind of embrace the task. This task is a wonderful opportunity to add to the expertise of our continued health of our community. You are at a moment in time where your efforts will depoliticize the science and celebrate the success of this most American institution. The first requirement of the Constitution, the pursuit of life. I'm being a little dramatic, but with that flourish, I'll give you my spiel and you can be on your way. I really want you to approach this process as if you're not appointing a Supreme Court judge. You're looking for stakeholders with technical skills. I heard the commissioners this morning stating that non-elected members need to represent the people. That by definition is the commissioner's job. The non-elected members are not there to elect to support the people. That's your job. The members that you select will be technical experts that'll help you do your job. Your job is to represent the people. My ideas for stakeholders are the institutions that suffer when public health fails, particularly the schools, the hospitals, the jail. That's where I'd encourage you to look for your non-elected members to the board in the future. My idea was you could get around the whole idea of writing job descriptions, job requirements, selection process, of which you are going to have to do. You've already taken applications that I don't even think have been publicly asked for yet. I don't know that you have a job description. All these things you're going to have to do over the next few months, and that's good. Or my idea would be you just could get around this whole process by appointing a hospital commissioner, a superintendent, and somebody that supervises the jail.
Vern, your 3 minutes are up. I'm sorry. I apologize, Vern. We keep to our rules. Please provide written comment, and I will be sure to view it, and I'm sure my seatmates will as well.
Okay, social determinants of health. Please make sure any person who applies for this understands that mantra. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vern. All right, we are going to go back into the person, if anybody is willing to come forward. Lee, if you would unspotlight Vern so I can see what's going on in the.
Okay. Thank you.
Just speak loud for the mic that's above your head.
I don't know where the microphone is. Good afternoon, commissioners. I want to speak on 2 things, and I will stay within my 3 minutes. I think that you've had your plate filled with the state of Washington continuing to take more of the county's roles and responsibilities. I heard you
this morning on the meeting dealing with the Public Health Board and so on and so forth. I would encourage one or all of the commissioners, of course, individually, to tune into this State Board of Health meeting tomorrow. They're considering WAC 246-100-040, and I have a printed copy that I'll leave with the secretary regarding quarantine and isolation. I don't see it in any alarmist way, but I think it's when you talk about removing the basic rights of any person in the United States, it better be a very serious discussion. My main point that I'd like to talk about today, though, is actually introduce legislation to increase stream buffers, which I will give you a copy of an article. It's a commentary. It is not a news article. It is commentary about making stream buffers 300 feet wide, up to 300 feet wide on each side, as I understand, of streams. For perspective, if you have 1,000 feet of stream crossing your property and a 300-foot boundary, you would lose the right to access to 6.88 acres of your property. And I would encourage you to speak with, I believe it's WASAC, which is the County Commissioners State Organization, if I remember correctly, and get behind some way to comment and sway this legislation, because it is going to definitely affect the primary keepers of open land in the county and in the state, which are farmers and ranchers and timberland owners in a very negative way. I will leave copies of these with the secretary. Thank you for taking time to listen.
Thank you. We are going to
We're talking
go.
about the same riparian area that Mr. Westwood.
Yes,
You're just calling this.
thank you.
That was
Yes,
Dave Barta for the record, by the way.
yes, it was.
All right.
I just-
Thank you. Next, we're going to go to Gabrielle Gilbert. Online. Gabrielle, you are muted, unless you are not trying to speak. Okay, if Gabrielle's not there, we will go down the line online to Lynn Mason. Lynn, if you would.
Hi, I'm here. Good afternoon, commissioners. I just wanted to ask what happened to the recordings of the Board of County Commissioner meetings that used to be posted online? I see that when I entered the Zoom meeting, I'm being asked to consent to joining the recorded meetings. Where do those recordings go? How can folks access them? I checked with bordering counties to see if this is the norm to have no recorded meetings available. And I checked with Stevenson, Yakima, and Benton counties. I checked with Morrow, Sherman, Wasco, and Hood River counties. All provide online video recordings of their meetings. Stevenson provides an audio recording. To bring myself up to date for this meeting, I went to check the minutes, and the last minutes are from November 23rd of last year. I bring this up because firstly, I thought the motion to archive video brought forward by Commissioner Christopher was voted down in a previous meeting. Secondly, it makes it very hard for the public to participate in up-to-date topics and decisions. It makes it hard to participate in and with our county government. It gives the impression that you're trying to shut the public out. I've heard in the past talk of pulling the plug on virtual meetings because it's not required by law to provide them and only have in-person meetings. I just feel that does not build trust with the community, and it's terrible customer service for the people who are the public that voted you in. So I would really like to be commenting on county business today, but since I don't know what has occurred, I have to resort to this. Since I have more time, I do want to add that on a different topic, we need an animal shelter. The undersheriff has taken on this cause for, I guess, his campaign. And this is something that I feel is very important. I know there was a facility before and it was run quite well. And I would like to see that up and running again. And I think that is something that the county should be overseeing, because it's a part of our community. It makes our community safer and a better community. And I'd like to see it to be a no-kill shelter as well. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And great job using the entirety of your 3 minutes. Going back to the room. Is there anybody?
No hands, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, if there's no one in the room, online, Pat Arnold. I see you're, there you are.
I'm Pat Arnold. I just wanted to respond to something that the previous speaker said about the upcoming cougar legislation. I request that y'all take a thoughtful look at this. Sheriff Sanger was on the radio a week or two ago talking about his cougar program, and what was notable about that was that he's only concerned with one part of the WDFW mission, which is public safety, and that is part of their mission. But he was dismissive of the biologists at WDFW and the other part of the WDFW mission, which is to monitor and protect species survival, not just cougars, but predators and other species, western gray squirrel. I mean, we're all familiar with this stuff. So I think that it's appropriate for the WDFW to have the ability to supervise and control both parts of their mission. And that's part of the intent of this legislation, I'm sure, is to allow both of those things to go forward. So I just requesting that you think this through and take some time with it. There's some WDFW commission meetings coming up on cougar safety, what is public health, and things like that. So this will be going on for a little bit. It is a legislative session, so it won't go on for too long, but there's a little bit of time to think about it. So that was my comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Arnold. All right, we will open it up one more time to in the audience, if anybody has changed their minds. I'm guessing nobody's coming up. I can't see anything. It's still on Pat. Gabrielle Gilbert, are you there now?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Okay, Gabrielle, your turn.
Okay, I first want to thank the county employees that I spoke to and email exchanges that I had concerning the need for the county to take a leading role in getting daycare. They were the definition of professional and courteous and helpful. The Columbia Gorge newspaper just ran a recent article at the end of December about the crisis situation about childcare in the area, and they mentioned Klickitat County in that article. You have a brand new multi-million-dollar building, and I'm asking the commissioners to find a room in that building that can be a start of a daycare facility in Goldendale for your county employees and others. In discussions with Christopher, Commissioner Christopher, and I appreciate the time he took to talk to me, the estimated investment from the county would be $1 million, and that would include a facility and staff. But if you have a new building that can provide a space, then you really have a county investment that is just staff and materials that you could look into. You cannot solve this if you do not even mention it in your 10-year economic development plan, and that is an oversight that needs to be addressed. And you cannot solve this by hand-wringing and pointing to a 2-year-old non-binding committee. You have to take a leading role the same way you did to garner the funds to get your new county building. You built a new county facility because you identified the need, and that's the same process required in addressing the need of daycare in the county. And you do not solve this by merely identifying the economic, you have to address the economic loss, the lack of daycare, the contribution that the lack of daycare has on local economics, the loss of skilled labor, the brain drain, and the ability to attract skilled workers, the stress on families. And this should be your drivers and when you're discussing this as commissioners. I think that this can be solved. And I guess what we're asking of you is to start solving it, but in real meaningful ways. And so I look forward to hearing what the commissioners have plans. Thank you for your time. Oh, and quickly, if I do have time, the state senators that are addressing the wildlife policy here in Klickitat are addressing the fact that the propaganda the sheriff uses about caring about the lives of young children and is ludicrous, as there's been no deaths concerning wildlife and children. The other thing is the loss of life that we've had in the county of Klickitat that affects children is suicide or neglect and abuse. And I think that when we address the fact that there are agencies, state agencies that address wildlife, they need to go back to being the drivers in that decision making and to get it out of the hands. And you can't be hound hunting. It's illegal to hound hunt. When you're searching for an animal that's left the property, you're hound hunting illegally and poaching, and you need to. And I hope that the senators are successful in addressing this. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Gilbert. I will go back to the room if there is anyone there.
Any repeats allowed?
No, no repeats allowed.
I didn't use the whole 3 minutes.
You did not.
I don't know what you had left, but we've got one more on the phone, so we're still going. 3376.
Hello, Ken McCune here in Goldendale. Thank you, Commissioner Christopher, for answering my communication with you concerning Annex 1. You said that this lot is not about parking for the public on Main Street. The county needs parking for its county vehicle and needs to build secured garages for our buses. It just so happens that that building, Annex 1, was originally built by the PUD, and that's exactly what it did. It had housed their equipment. It housed their trucks, their service trucks. So when the county got a hold of it, they built all those offices in there. And so if you were to go ahead and gut it, you would have a wide open shop garage there to park buses, and you wouldn't have to tear it down. You could utilize it the way it is. So when we get to talking about this next week in the afternoon, I want you to recall the fact that originally that's exactly what that building is. It's a building ready to be used as secured garage for your county vehicle. So it makes no sense. It's not logical to tear something down and rebuild, spend county money to build something that really we wouldn't need if we just put a little time and thought and money into the current building. So I'll be looking forward to talking with you guys next week. And, you know, Commissioner Christopher said that he was elected to manage taxpayer funds in a fiscally conservative way. He says spending tons to replace this lot and evicting people will. Anyway, he was talking about the cost, the $250,000 times two to cover the cost to get a new lot because they got to buy new lots and move people out of their homes and stuff. You don't have to do that. Just keep the building you got and save a lot of money, save a lot of costs for reconstruction, of a construction of a new building. Thank you. That's all I have to say for today. Talk with you next week.
Thank you, Mr. McCune. Okay, we have time for one more. Is there anyone in the room who would like to give public comment? I don't know if anybody's walking forward. Nobody? Okay. Russ has raised his hand. Russ.
Zach, can you hear me now?
We can hear you now, Russ.
Hey, good afternoon, Commissioners. Russ Sampson here at Goldendale. I'd just like to echo Mr. Barta's comments reference to the State Board of Health meeting tomorrow, and I would encourage everyone to tune in at 1:30 they're going to be taking public testimony on that too, and it's concerning the WAC he cited 246-100-040, which has to do with procedures for isolation and quarantine. And what they're wanting to do is include COVID-19 under this WAC, which would allow any local health officer in the state to issue emergency detention orders to people who don't voluntarily comply with the governor's COVID mandates. This could be anything from testing to vaccination fee or anything else. And I just find that it's really concerning that this much power is going to be given to unelected officials. This health officer may also invoke the powers of local police officers, sheriffs, constables, and any other employees in their jurisdiction to enforce this quarantine. I just think it's something that we need to keep our eye on and be concerned about. And I just appreciate taking the time today.
Thank you, Russ. And if we could have Ken muted, please. We're getting feedback. Thank you. Okay, being 1:25, we're going to move into commissioner responses if they so choose. Gentlemen, is there anything you'd like to say? I can't see if you raise your hand because it's still showing Mr. Hanson's phone. So once you guys say something, it'll pop back up.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, this is Commissioner Christopher. I'd like to start by allowing our clerk to give a comment regarding recording minutes, meeting minutes, and anything else pertinent that you wanted to answer from earlier.
I'm gonna defer to Ibby Jane. She is the one that posts those minutes.
Okay, I'll come up here so you guys can hear me because I feel really bad.
It actually sounds really good today.
In response to Lynn Mason's testimony earlier. So.
Yes, okay, so for our storage, we had changed from storing them on our hard drives to the Google Drive. And when we did that, we don't know if somehow it changed the encrypting or what happened, but when we post them on the website, you have to be in Google Chrome to be able to watch the videos. If you try to watch them on Internet Explorer or anything else, they don't show up. So they're there, they're just different. And the meeting minutes have been approved, but were signed last week. And so I did not sign them because Chairman Anderson wasn't here. So they will all be posted today.
So we use a different browser for the meeting
Yeah.
minutes. I know we had, this is Commissioner Christopher again, I know we had discussions on how many Zoom meetings we were going to store on there because that's a lot of data. And the more data you store, the more you're going to pay somebody to store said data. And so we determined that I think we said that only the last 6 months, if we were going to keep it within 6 months, so we don't end up with 7 years of storage, costing the taxpayers tens of thousands of dollars to store old videos that people aren't watching.
I have one comment to add to that. We keep them indefinitely.
Right.
So if it's not on the website, someone can always email us and request a particular video.
Video meeting, right. And then Ken McCune, you're talking about Annex 1, you said, sounded like you were aware that we were going to have a meeting with Public Works next week in the afternoon. I just wanted to make sure that you were aware we were going to have a meeting with Public Works next week in the afternoon and discuss Annex 1. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Commissioner Sauter, do you have anything?
The only thing I would add is to the first comment, Mr. Harpoon, as far as his comments about the application process. The applications that we were speaking of this morning were not exclusive of a vacancy on the Board of Health. That is just our general, people can apply for any board or commission basically at any time. And we have those on file. I think we keep them for 2 years. And so it's, yes, as far as we have not had any kind of specific advertisement to a vacancy on the Board of Health, but we generally do ask people all the time, if you have any interest in serving on anything, you can submit an application anytime. Those are the applications that we were talking about. To the other comment about the virtual meetings that may have been based on a comment that I had made about the couple, 3 weeks ago about, and I will reiterate that we're not required to have, we are meeting in person. I do want to be clear, though, I do definitely support the use of online and people being able to participate virtually. I don't have any interest in not having that as far as for our regular business meeting, because I think it makes it easier for people, so you don't have to travel to Goldville to participate. I was just making the point that it's not a requirement, but that we are doing it.
Clarification, this is Commissioner Christopher again. We're doing it for our regular meetings on Tuesday. We are not recording Thursday workshops because there's no action taken, and we're trying to save data storage to save the taxpayers money.
And I would like to say thank you, everyone, for giving your public comment and for being polite and for not name calling or doing anything else. This is exactly what we want to see with public comment. And it gives us a chance to respond as well. I would ask, are either of my seatmates planning on attending the State Board of Health meeting tomorrow that has been mentioned by at least 2 speakers today?
I have a rural county insurance pool meeting at the same exact time, so I unfortunately not.
I'm going to attempt to log on throughout the day. I've got meetings with senators and legislators throughout the day too. And then next, it was asked if we would take a stand with regards to the Riparian bill. How do you two feel about that?
This Commissioner Christopher, I want to look into that a smidge more, just to make sure I have all my I's dotted and my T's crossed. And I also want to look into the wordage of the bill for the same regard. And so next week, maybe we can come to a consensus about standing together as a board on certain issues.
Yeah, I would concur with that. I need to check the language on the riparian bill. I suspect, I know where I'm at on it. I think it will definitely be a topic on Friday's legislative steering committee meeting as far as for the state WASAC to take a position. I suspect I know what the position will be, but I never like to commit to it until I actually read the language to make sure, because sometimes we do get misled from time to time. Not that I'm suggesting we're being misled, but I've learned from experience to tread carefully and to be thoughtful, and I will do the same thing. All I saw was as far as on the other legislation, proposed legislation on the cougar stuff, all I've seen is the press release that was a response from that. So I'm not going to comment until I actually see what they're proposing.
And I've read both, and I would say it would be good for us to have a discussion next week on both of these pieces of legislation, as well as any take that our prosecuting attorney would like to give us on it as well before we do make a decision. Is there anything else? Hearing none, we are going to move on to department update. Director Jeff King, please come forward.
Clear room.
Nobody wants to listen to me. That's okay. I won't take it personally.
You got legislation out there too.
Yes.
Statewide 911.
Yes, I do.
Halfway through that, more time already down.
So here is my revised and updated version. Sorry, Chairman Anderson.
I'll email it to him.
Yeah. Yeah, this is up. There's been a lot happen in the last 5 days.
This is more than what we got.
Yes, so what I can submit on Thursday morning by 10 a.m. So never what is actually Then we'll do this report on Tuesday, especially Tuesday afternoon. Yeah, see as we go through this. I have things that I learned just before I walked over here.
Ibby, would you press the preset number 2 so that it'll zoom in on Director King?
Don't get too close now.
Preset number 2.
Nope. Maybe it's number 1 or 3. There we go. Perfect.
That one. We're getting so technical. You guys, yeah, got it going. The sound is nice today. I like that.
Didn't know there was a change. Just happened to be working today.
Thank you.
Way to go, IT.
Take them when you get them.
Go ahead, King.
Hey, thank you. So I'll start out as we usually do. We have nothing on your consent agenda today. Public safety radio system, again, is functioning mostly normally at this time. I hate to have to keep saying that week over week. But the multiple grid power outages that we had related to winter storms over the last week or so affected the system. As it relates to all of those issues, the system is back online functioning normally from the user's perspective. We had multiple extended outages at the flat top radio site. PUD had significant trouble getting to flat top with snow conditions both on Monday and Tuesday, as well as over the weekend when it failed the second time. Thursday through Sunday, finally able to get to flat top on Sunday, in which they actually walked the distance to get there and remove that tree on Sunday. So I want to put out a big kudos to our PUD linemen and all the support personnel. I worked closely with them for the last 7 or 8 days. And Ron Eyrig is their interim ops manager, and his last day is later this week. Thanks to him for his cooperation and coordination with me during this process and all their hard work. However, that did put us in a precarious position for the propane tank fuel for the generator at Flat Top. And still looking into that, but at this point I've determined that we do not need to go there and refuel. As Commissioner Sauter knows, we had to do that in 2015 and it was at a significant expense. And as I just walked in earlier, got a call from our counterparts with US Cellular, that is also up at Flat Top. He had gone to the site to check his own propane levels. Dug out our propane tank. Snow, red the tank, and we have sufficient fuel to last through another multi-day event. So I'm not going to pull the trigger on a propane refilling expedition to the tune of many thousands of dollars. But I will continue to monitor that situation. The Diamond Gap site, however, when the power failed there on Tuesday afternoon, I believe it was, the generator failed to start. Wave Broadband is the responsible party at that shelter for the facilities, generator specifically. They tried to get there on Thursday and were unable to with their tracked vehicles. Once I was informed of that, and I started working with them to make another attempt on Friday, myself and the sheriff's track side by side to assist them figure out how to get that generator back online. At that point, we're on backup power. A couple hours of that notification, the site went down, the batteries died, the site went offline completely for over 12 hours, affecting our public safety radio service to the Glenville area for Snowden and so on.
And remind me if I have some recollection of sometimes those batteries, if they fully discharged and they're shot, they're no good.
That's correct. However, since that happened at Diamond Gap in 2014, we put a low voltage disconnect So at the point that they get to that critical voltage, then the battery system shuts down and turns off the equipment.
Recall that was an expensive
Yes.
word.
Yes, so we won't have to spend $5,000 or so on new batteries. But I am going to be working with Wave Broadband and determine a permanent solution for that ongoing issues with their generator up there. Wave did then, supervisor made the decision Thursday night to not go on Friday. So I contacted the county's contractor for this purpose. And I've got to give them some big kudos. At 8:30 at night, when I called the legacy power system technician and said, this is the situation, we've got a public safety radio site online. That we need from Princeville right now on and go attempt to get that back online, which I approved and they did. And 4:30 in the morning, they contacted me again, said they had made it to the site successfully with no small feet. They again had to walk in the distance because they couldn't get there on track vehicles all the way. But that kept our outage to roughly 12 hours from the time we went offline to the time that they got the generator back in service, back up on the radio system. So given the circumstances, I think everything went as well as it could, but it was a very challenging week and weekend. With the cooperation and coordination of a whole bunch of folks trying. I don't know on the emergency management side, base radio system side separately. Front leg, when we were without power for multiple days during the last week. Everything got more complicated. AT&T is also has a site at Flat Top. They lost power at Flat Top twice during the week. That was Monday at 6:30 until Tuesday at roughly 2:30, and again on Thursday afternoon, early evening until Sunday. Nobody in the Trial Lake Valley had AT&T service or internet because their generator had failed previously, had not yet been replaced. So they went down hard immediately as soon as the power went out. Made life difficult for lots of people. The reason that the radio system is not functioning completely normally is the continuation of the microwave radio interference at Stacker Butte. Determined that that's where it's coming from, a shelter at Stacker Butte, a wireless site. Unfortunately, that building is owned by Day Wireless, which is our contracted support provider. They are working to get a hold of their mentor, figure out exactly which party is responsible for that interference and get that dealt with. Why I have great confidence they'll be able to do that in a timely fashion and stop this interference issue that we're having. Any questions about the radio system? Performance and functionality. On the maintenance side, I just put all that on the back burner due to the weather conditions and the workload priorities. Agreements, same thing. That's been on hold since I talked to you last. The other priorities. And the radio project got at one meeting since we last met with Public Works and the contractor to design that site. Just a few updates on that. I have not communicated an update to our district commissioners related to that due to time constraints. But I am being reassured that the equipment that we needed to order by the end of the year was done. So we should not have any issues with that. And with that, I'll turn it over to Bill, Chief of Operations, to talk about 911 dispatch.
All right, so, don't have phone number reports and we haven't had those for a few months. One of the issues there is the recording system with our phone. Has a little glitch, which we were hoping to get resolved at the beginning of the year when we were gonna run our update. And so that was put on hold, so. And I'll talk about that a little bit more. On the staffing situation, staffing continues at the same level. We have the 3 communications officers are in training, still in training, which is a really good sign. And we see that they're progressing quite well. So the outcome should be good at the end of their training. And our goal is to complete their training before fire season. That'll be a huge relief on everybody. We went ahead with the lead communication officer promotions. Chester House and Pam Ship are going to be our 2 new leads, and we met with them yesterday afternoon. And luckily, they did not run out of the room. We met and
Crying.
yeah, and gave them a plan, plan for the year, and there's going to be your workload. So they stuck around through the end, so it was a good sign. And right now they're filling in shifts as normal, and we're hoping that once the 3 communication officers come out of training, they'll have more time off the floor to complete other tasks and updates that we need. On the operations side, so I mentioned our phone system update. We rescheduled it. That was going to be done on I remember the 3rd, which was the middle of the snow coming down on us, and the call volume increased throughout the gorge. So we decided to hold that off and reschedule because during the downtime, the phone system will be routed to our neighbors at Community County, who will pick up the phones and then transfer over to us. But that also involves the other agencies across the gorge, Hood River, Wasco, and Frontier Dispatch.
How long is that down for?
We were estimating the update is just a computer update that should be fairly simple. It can come back, right? Could come back as fast as 5 minutes, 30 minutes. Yeah, let's not.
Advertised time, 4 hours.
Yeah, the advertised and the most that, the contingency plan is going to be 4 hours. At 4 hours, the plan will be, we revert everything back to the way it was before we started the update and come up with another plan later on, but bring the system back up. So there is the contingency for that is depending on the number of updates and how fast it runs, it could be up to 4 hours. So, and like I mentioned, we have the plan with all our neighboring agencies in the along the gorge that would normally receive calls and transfer over to us, so that can be as seamless as possible for them as well. So right now we're looking towards the end of the month, beginning of February for that.
The complicating factor is the primary technician for the phone service provider is in Idaho and hasn't gotten here. Storm.
Yeah.
Wasn't gonna happen.
Wasn't, yeah. And yeah, his safety is important as well. So other than that, with that phone update, part of that is going to be working on the text to 911. That would bring our system with those updates, and then we can progress down the line with training our communications officers and making that connection with the state system. So we're hopeful that the text to 911 will come to Klickitat this year, 2022. still have an ongoing state access issue, and that's as mentioned before, that's a state system for law enforcement where we check driver's license warrants and such. State's still trying to work on bringing that up to speed. And then last item here is going to be State Bill 5555 concerning communication officer state certification and recognition.
I apologize, I was not able to log in. Updated, you've been briefed on this legislation already, let us know.
And I have it on email, so I can send that out if you'd like. Yeah.
I'm aware of it, but I don't know.
Okay, so and I have it right here. I'll send it to your emails right now. It's going to be 3 attachments. We knew this legislation was coming. The legislation basically asked for a state mandate on the basic training for communications officers. Currently, we are one of many states that does not have a state requirement for training. So we look at national standards, and that's where we gather our training to train our communications officers along with the local knowledge that goes with our county. So this legislation calls for a state mandate on minimum level of training and certification. As you know, law enforcement, fire personnel, and EMS have a certification process, basic training that they must complete. And we are the only ones in that first responder community that do not. We knew this was coming. One of the advocates for it is the Association for Public Safety Telecommunications, APCO. And to prepare for this, it's been in the works for several years now. The training that we provide our communications officers has met those APCO standards. So that way we knew once it hopefully passes, and we're in support of it for passing. Once we pass that, we are meeting those training standards, and we would just need to do just the bare minimum to catch up, as opposed to having to send everybody to training. So we plan for that. The best part about—
Is there any jurisdictions in Washington that aren't doing training that means the guy? I mean, not that it's my concern. I'm glad we are.
Yeah.
But I wonder,
but
it could be pushback from some folks because of
yeah,
the
smaller counties. Yeah. And so the training varies. I know that our training will go for as much as 6 months until we let somebody off by themselves, right? But we do have, almost everybody does a 40-hour standard. Also the state 911 office provides that basic training as well. So they have 2 classes right now. They're called Telecom 1, Telecommunications 1, and Telecommunications 2. And they provide that training as part of the 911 grant. So if any agency does not have their training in-house, they can attend those classes. And we actually have those classes hosted here at the end of March. We're going to be hosting the class to get our 3 communications officers through them as well. So that we're just that much rounded, see what's going on, see what they're bringing from other agencies.
So if this passes, you don't see much of a difference in our county's training because we're already there, you're thinking?
Correct.
Or you just kind of-
We might need to make a little adjustments, a couple of adjustments, but it's definitely not a surprise or something completely new. And budget-wise, I don't see any big budget issue because it is most of that training is part of the 911 grant cover, and where the state also provides similar classes, they'll have to adjust theirs and provide that training as well. So interestingly enough, with this bill, usually the bills pass and then they try and figure out where the money is. The state has that money through the 911 system. We just need a bill that tells it what, what training to do. And the second part of it is that on this bill, as the commissioners in the past, this body recognized communications officers as first responders for our county. Passing this bill, the state would follow suit. So it would be a huge, it would have a huge meaning to our communications officers to have that recognition.
Mr. Sauter, could you check with your WASAC to see small counties?
Get on my WhatsApp list. I actually have.
I thought you started a pencil over there when you started talking about WASAC. So. But you're our designated appointee.
Yeah. Just want to go on record with the three commissioners that myself, Bill, and our department is in support of this bill becoming. It would be a good thing to set a standard that everybody was aware of.
And part of that standard that you may follow through or talk to other counterparts is on the bill, it calls for a certification board. And so it does ask for representation from the law enforcement body, communications officers, city and county representatives to be on that board, that certification board that
Union reps from both
union
the
reps.
east and west side of Cascades.
Yeah.
We're trying to make it as fair as possible. And that division of the Cascade Mountains has been an issue in the past. Like you said, small east side counties should be represented.
So yeah, on that, it calls for many representatives for that body and appointees by the different groups. So other than that, I've emailed that to you. So I mean, it's plenty of reading. It was read in to the Senate on Monday, and so far it's still alive. So it's a good sign, and we're hopeful that it'll pass.
Have any questions? Let us know.
And then I'll turn it back to Jeff for the MCI.
Yeah, I'm still on hold. Haven't got to it. So any questions on 911 dispatch? Okay, thank you, Phil. Emergency management program function, COVID-19, still there, as we all know. Fortunately, the changing of the calendar didn't change anything related to that, except for now being notified that certain medical providers in our county, specifically North Shore, in the last couple of days, have found that N95 masks are again unavailable for commercial purchase. So we've got a request from them for more N95 masks, which we hope to fill in the coming days, because that was put in as an ASAP request. And we also made our final order on the COVID-19 supplemental grant at the end of the year. So we have a shipment of N95 masks that we just received today before I came over here. So that's wonderful timing. And at the same time, the state EOC and the Department of Health made an announcement last week that more protective masks were needed for people to use in public, needing N95s. So the state EOC and Department of Health is now going to, well, they already have released the N95 masks for public use and public distribution, the ones that we get from them, the ones that we currently have that we got from the past. For not only public in general, but also for schools. So we expect that we'll be getting more resource requests in the coming days from schools, other entities in the public and from private individuals to get those N95 masks. I'm trying to determine how to manage that distribution because the state is left to us to do that. Unlike any other states, they usually will drop ship it directly to another entity. Doing that, or haven't been doing that. We've done it on occasion for us, and they're definitely not going to get them out to the individual citizens. So
that would be interesting for you, but
yeah,
what do? Make an allotment of 5 per citizen per request? I mean, how do you? And then what?
We're working on it.
You meet them at the gate of the, it's.
We will have distribution and pickup points. Is what we will do
during the vaccine clinic.
Yep. Public health offices that we have, or any other place they could go to pick them up, community centers, even schools.
Just worried about the public stockpiling boxes.
All things that are on our radar. Coordinator, Huey and I are trying to figure out what this latest announcement, because we have no forewarning of these things. Actually, I take that back. We had like 2 hours of forewarning from SEC. Hey, the governor's gonna make this announcement. DOH is gonna put this out later today, but don't tell anybody until he does. That was sometime last week in the middle of the storm, and I didn't even see it until Friday. So, along with that announcement, the public distribution of N95s above and beyond health workers. It's also an announcement of providing expanded testing availability and mass booster and vaccination clinics. We're all in that last announcement. Any questions about that? Okay, make sure I'm on track. So, county outdoor burn ban update, county code 8.24 update project still on hold. The rest. The ENS system update is progressing. Frank is working on that on a daily basis, and our new vendor, sorry, our contract deal vendor, there's overlap. They gave us 2 months. Vendor gives us 2 months, no charge, overlap. Work with them to get our system and all of its data transferred from the old service to the new. That is moving forward very smoothly. Frank told me this morning that by the end of the week, he should have all that new data put into the new system. Excuse me, that whole data into the new system, and then start updating. Because of the 2 county ops closures last week, there were lots of people wanting us to update their information, county employees as well as citizens. So it's been working on that feverishly to get everybody up to date so they get notifications that they desire. And I'll skip over the grant programs. Still talk about that emergency notification system for county employees. Continue to get those from department heads and the employees related to the building. You guys don't like to go out. And a change over to the ENS vendor. So that is also going smoothly to get everybody in which offices they are now in and what address that office is located at. So we make those announcements and notifications appropriately. That's impressive as well. On the emergency management program grants, see the list there. That list is not much change in my draft, except for the UMPC act, like I stated, it ended on December 31st. That final report stated in the process. Those other grants are as listed. Winter storm updates. Tell you lots of stuff about that. I won't waste your time. I think you probably know what went on.
We lived some of it.
Yes, everybody in the county lived it for their own experience.
Back line in the ice, but that.
Yeah. I mentioned
That's
some
just
of it.
me.
Yeah. But if you have any questions about, what happened, what actions were taken, we did get some requests for assistance. People looking for somebody to shovel their roof off before it collapsed and so on and so forth. Put out public messages. Of course, we don't have the capacity to provide those services, directed them to, contractors or other nonprofits that might help them with that. But at a certain point in the middle of last week, everybody was overwhelmed. Couldn't find anybody, to plow your driveway or shovel your roof off your fire hall in a professional manner. Yeah, or your fire station. But we did put out those public messages on Tuesday on our social media. It said the hazards, including, snow load on roofs, take the appropriate actions, here's how to deal with winter storms, and so on. Frank posted those on Tuesday afternoon. When we saw that rain on snow events starting, that's a big trigger. What we didn't see that I was happy about was any significant flooding, even localized flooding. We got no reports of anything that was so far outside of the usual, right? There's still a lot of snow, but it's melting slowly instead of that rapid rain on snow event that we thought we might have at the end of last week. I'm very happy that that didn't happen. I had enough to do. So right now, there's no significant events occurring in the county related to that. Back operating. I'm sure there are some people out there. I think it was Monday morning. I got a report from the PD. They still had like 30 or so people without power in the county. Those are folks that are at the end of their transmission lines. It just takes that much longer to get to them. That's all I'm aware. Any questions?
I'm hearing that the cell tower in BZ that provides Verizon and AT&T is still down. Multiple people have put in like their service requests, but they're not getting, and they've been doing it for days and they haven't been getting any response. I didn't know if you might have a better contact number with those guys to try to bump that up the system.
Okay, so you're saying you're getting reports that all three carriers are down in the BZ area? Is that?
Yep.
That's three completely different locations.
That's what I've been seeing all over Facebook though. And I think it was 2 out of the 3 is what I've been seeing.
Okay. Yeah, the site that you can see from BZ is the US Cellular site. So, yeah, I will reach out to the technicians that I know, work with each of those companies, see what that status is.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, the only one that I was made aware of, like I said, from the AT&T technician, we had an email exchange over the weekend about coordinating refueling of the flat top. He admitted that their generator was non-functional and they were out the entire time that the public utility was out.
And I'm also hearing a lot, people are seeing a lot of people that are saying that CenturyLink isn't coming back online after the power outages.
Okay. Well, I would believe that that is kind of similar to the natural gas outage we had, and like what the PUD is going through now, there's people that are at the end of the line, right? All that, they get the main service going and then they have to work their way down to each individual service.
Right.
But I also have a good friend that works from CenturyLink. I'll see what he knows, find out the truth. No,
Okay.
no dispersions, but social media will be my friend in the past for really accurate information. So I'll treat that with skepticism I have learned to use.
Yeah, I would say in the past, if ever.
Yeah. There's valid stuff on there, no doubt, but you have to verify everything. Yep, I can check with those folks, and if there is some serious issues, and I would say that, if you're contacted, and what we do also, like you already mentioned, Commissioner Anderson, is that they need to contact their service provider and continue to contact them because as they move through that list of restorations, they need it. They can believe that they fixed the problem for everybody, and if you don't complain again, a day or two later, they don't know you're still without service. And that's my recommendation when people approach me.
That was the only question I had.
Thank you.
I have one thing that's missing from here.
Uh-oh.
I know, right? Annual Klickitat County Sheriff's Office Search and Rescue Volunteer Appreciation Ceremony.
That is not under my capacity as the Director of Emergency Management.
Oh, that's true, but I thought there would be an invite on here.
There was an email invite sent out weeks ago.
I was just gonna mention that I won't be there tonight.
Wonderful.
To represent the board.
Excellent. Look forward to seeing you. That's my other
That's
hat.
the other hat of the other phone.
Yep, working with the Sheriff's Office. Yes, we will show our appreciation as a county, as the Sheriff's Office, to search and rescue volunteers. Right.
How many people normally attend that?
Normally, last year was all virtual. Currently, I believe we have 63 SAR volunteers, and typically we'll get anywhere from 20 to 30 members of the families. Given COVID and recent cases, I don't know. All bets are off on that. But, we have found a venue that is willing to host us. So we're going to do our best to hold an in-person event this year, following those rules. But yeah,
Commissioner Christopher, would you please give everyone there tonight my thanks as well? You guys don't want what I have, so I won't be making it.
No, I fully plan to fill you guys in on that I was going and get your permission to tag you in on my statements of appreciation to all of
Thank you.
them. No. Everybody but Dave.
excellent. Thank you, gentlemen. If that's all, nothing else. Okay. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Great afternoon.
Do I see Lynn and Lynn Ward there? Do we have anybody else? Is there people in there that need to talk to us, department heads, electeds?
Prosecutors in here, Liz in here.
They're both on the agenda today.
Yeah, either one of them are in a hurry, so I don't.
All right. Let me go back to the blue card. All right. 2:30, Building Department Director Lynn Ward for new business. Come on forward.
Make your case.
Yes, come make my case. This sheet is just some numbers. Last week, Commissioner Anderson asked about roughly back to 2006 range. So I just did some quick numbers. It's not valuations at all. It's just permit numbers.
Did you already send this to?
I did. I emailed it to Commissioner Anderson since he's not here.
It's hard to read because it's not sideways.
Oh,
Like
well.
the rest of the ones you said.
Which is why my head's always tilted sideways.
Yeah, yes. Cindy puts the other one together. I did this one. So I'll tell her you like hers better.
No, I just have to prop my computer.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, I just kind of,
Yeah, exactly.
since
See,
the
this is
question,
preferred.
yeah, since the question was asked, thought I'd give at least some, quick numbers of permits. Kind of back to 2006, 2007, 2008 compared to 19, 20.
But actually, speaking of that, it seems like we have consensus. Can you ask Cindy to print it this way and not this way when it comes to email?
I can ask her if it
We can
will.
rotate it.
Okay, I'll ask her if she can do that.
I have asked her to flip it.
Uh-huh.
She has PDF editor, so
Okay.
it can.
Well, we'll approach that.
Because on my email, I don't have access.
Yeah,
to
to rotate it. That makes sense. So, all right, we put me as an add-on to ask your blessings. Jeff helped put together some information on leasing another large format scanner. Currently, there's only one within the county, and Public Works is using it every bit as much as what anyone else needs to use it, because they're in the same boat as us for having a large volume of records. So I asked Jeff to do some research. It's an add-on to the current lease, and when I asked TX if we needed to go to the PA's office, and they said they weren't planning on running it by the PA's, with an additional lease to a current contract that is already in place. There is no new contract being made or agreed upon, just an item expenditure. So hopefully that gives you that part. But basically what I am here to ask is if you would approve the building department putting it under their budget to lease another large format scanner. We still have hundreds and hundreds of large rolls to copy or to scan, I mean, so that we can archive them. And then like this morning, one to fulfill a public records request, a large one, because it's a commercial project. Amelia was over there for an hour scanning this one large set. We have multiples of those. So I mean, there's a lot of volume still left to scan in order to thin our records and reduce the bulk that we have.
Are we charging for said public records request?
Not when they're digitally sent. This won't copy, this will only scan and save so that we can save it into our.
Digitally and then send it.
Correct. Well, when what we've been doing with the files is save it into the shared drive, and then we're saving it into SmartGov. So it's saved in 2 locations. So if someone calls with a question, Megan can answer them, Cindy can fulfill public records requests. Ultimately, eventually that'll be faster. But now we have to go into the paper copies and go searching. But what I would like permission to do is enter into a 3-year lease with Canon, who's already providing all of our other copiers and scanners in the county. It would be $195 a month. But it would benefit the county, I think, greatly in helping to get that scanning done of records that go way back. And if the one in Public Works was ever out of commission or something like that, or it was occupied, ours would be available to other departments as well. I wouldn't just have it be only for building department use. But I know Public Works, has been in the same boat as us.
We agree.
Commissioner Sauter.
There's the camera.
Would you anticipate, at the end of the 3 years, will the backlog, because a lot of what you need to scan is not, it's the backlog of
It's the
stuff.
backlog.
So could we anticipate at the end of the 3 years, we don't need it anymore, that we can go back to having one?
If we have enough done, yes, I would just like the option.
Could we have enough done at the,
I don't
as a
know.
aspirational goal?
My
So-
goal is, yes, my goal is that in any free time we have, that we'll be working on it.
Because I'm always careful about adding technology that
Yeah.
becomes now the new baseline. It's like, sure, that's how we started with one desktop. That's
Right.
like we do.
Right, I would very much like it to be done by the 3-year mark. If we're halfway done, I mean, I would give you a good gauge of at 3 years from now to say we made, X amount of progress. And then either A, we don't need the lease anymore, or B, can I extend the lease? But in the meantime, to make Gordy happy in our new building, it would just help a lot in reducing that backlog. Because there's plenty of backlog. We still have a few things over in our old building that haven't been brought over because where are we going to put them? I mean, we just have a lot of stuff.
Commissioner Christopher.
For me, it comes down to two things you got going for you. Just one of them is technology to get us out of the Stone Age. And two is your budget is pretty self-sufficient. It's not tax dollars funding it. So I'm in favor.
How many hours do you think is there? Because to me, this is part of the archiving project that we've been doing for a while.
I can't even think in the term of hours. I'm more in the months category.
Have you seen the number of cases and boxes that are up there?
I've been working on it for probably 2 years and hopefully now can do, more time because I'm not packing boxes to move and that sort of thing, but hours and hours. I worked on it many hours already and with many more to go.
Will you need a supplemental for this or did it possibly fit what?
I do not anticipate needing a supplemental.
Do not anticipate it.
Have you talked to planning? Do they need a scanner like this as well? And you could split it between the two departments?
I talked briefly to Mochi. She said they don't have a great need for it because a lot of theirs got done already. They had an intern for a longer period than we did, so a lot of their larger ones, but they still do have some larger ones that they do need to scan. And it would also be available to them to do so. And cost-wise, I would project that we would use it the majority of the time, so I wouldn't anticipate, asking another department to put a part of the bill simply because I think I'm gonna be the vast majority of the usage.
Commissioner Sutter? Thoughts?
Yeah, I'm okay with it as far as my aspiration though would be to try to get the backlog worked through.
I would love.
And then, take a look at it, see maybe there's, it's not a huge amount of money, as Commissioner Christopher said, your department is mostly fee driven. This is, it's appropriate. These, the reason you have all of these, they're sets of plans and stuff that people have submitted to scan them, to keep them. They're bulky. I know when you're done, do we allow can I come rent it as a member of the public to do that? I was moving some stuff last night. I'm like, why am I keeping these? Because I may want them sometime.
You may want them,
rolled up scrolls of plans and things I've done.
But this way it's at least in our system so that it's going to be accessible to people. And then once we get that backlog product, then as things are on hold and a certificate of occupancy is issued, then we can go scan that set. And it's not like this one and then all the hundreds that are still sitting there.
Commissioner Christopher?
Making sure my hand was on the camera. When we put out our COVID money requests for expenses, if I remember right, you had desktop printer type stuff on there. Did you have a scanner on there?
I did ask for a large scale scanner.
Back at that.
I did, yes.
Was
But not-
granted.
Yeah, but not knowing where, not knowing the status of that, but needing to, keep working on it because we only have so much room available.
Say yes.
Do we want to put this on the consent agenda for next week, or would one of you like to make a motion?
I'm fine with making a motion if you're assuming you'd like to get on this. Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion to authorize the lease of an IQ Qualtro X 4400 scanner from Canon at a monthly cost of $195 for a 36-month period for the building department.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, motion carries. Thank you very much, Lynn.
Thank you
Is there
very
anything
much.
else for us?
No, that's it for now.
Okay. I hate to give you more work, but on your permits, back in 2006, 7, 8, it didn't say how many single family homes were there on that list.
No, I did it by the types of permits, but I didn't
Right.
take out single family. Would you like that further broken out?
I'd love that if you have a couple of minutes and it's still easily accessible.
Do you want it for all of the years that I showed?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. And do I need to do anything else?
No.
with you? Okay,
No, there's a document for them to, I guess, sign it.
all righty.
And then you'll get it.
Thank you much.
Thank you, Lynn.
You're welcome.
All right, moving on, consent agenda.
Mr. Chairman, to make a motion that we approve the consent agenda with 7 items.
I'll second the motion.
There's a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda with 7 items. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. All right, payments.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we pay the accounts payable warrants in the amount of $179,891.62. The payroll benefit warrants in the amount of $0 for the date ending January 11th, 2022.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to pay the bills. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, motion carries. All right, elected officials report. Prosecuting Attorney David Cannell.
Just executive. He just has executive, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, since it is executive, is there any other business that you gentlemen have that we would need to discuss after executive?
Nothing, they can't wait.
Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to shut down the Zoom and go into executive session for how long, Prosecutor Cannell?
5 minutes.
5 minutes to start with.
Always 8 minutes. You changed it to 10.
All right, 10 minutes to start with. And when we come back, all we're going to do is adjourn the meeting. So thank you all for logging in, visiting us on this very fine Tuesday. Please come again next week. And there will be no meeting, no workshop on Thursday. So we will be meeting next Tuesday morning. Thank you and have a great day. Would you like to give me just call my cell?
Yeah.
Yes, he's gonna call your cell.
All right, thank you.
Announce that you're going into executive session via the RCW.
Yes, we're going into executive session via the RCW. Where is that at? It's not in my,
It's on your blue card.
is it? Oh, executive session with accordance of RCW 4230.110, I. The issue of a general nature will be discussed in open session.